Beyond that, we so we have gone above and beyond that. We when we set the statement of intent last year, we always foresaw sort of this opportunity playing out. But our goal at the time was to resolve the challenges we had with the border agencies. We've been able to do that, and even in this financial year, we'll be able to see a plain land. So that's the start in the last couple of weeks of the year. So that's gone really well, and I'll talk a bit about Precinct North and the property opportunities in just the coming slides. So the technology guys are with us. If we just move to the next slide. So it's a bit of just a roadmap of the next sort of couple of years, financial performance. So we've got a really strong half-year result, and as has been the case in the past couple of years, we've been fortunate that Titanium Park's had some land sale activity. This is our last year of land sale activity for probably a couple of years. We don't have any future land sales contracted. We've largely, the precincts we've developed to date, we've largely sold out of. And as we talk about that pivotal time and securing new lease build, we're transitioning away from consciously, actively selling land and using that capital to now holding assets for long-term benefit and generating long-term income. So you won't see land sales feature as prominently as you have done. We'll still respond to inquiry if we get them, but very much, and you'll see new revenue streams and sort of on stream in a couple of years' time, 4 million. Primarily, that's leasing income. There's some positive impact of Jetstar, more people at the airport. That's more car parking, more retail spend, see more landing fees from airlines, but a significant growth in the non-aeronautical leasing income as well. The goal of all this non-aeronautical development, of course, is to keep the airport self-sustaining, first and foremost. And as it matures and the airport self-sustaining, then how we then return that benefit to shareholders as well, as we've talked about in the past. So our total debt, currently debt sitting at about 20 million. So to see our debt in the next 18 months move to 70 million is significant. But that is a feature of the investment we're making to see international services resume, the investment in enabling Precinct North. So of course, and I'm sure you know about development, as you the first mile of road is the most expensive because you have all the infrastructure for the subsequent development going in. And of course, holding assets rather than selling them means the debt will sit on the balance sheet for a bit longer. And just to our next slide, just on the runway designation. So those of you that have been here for a couple of years will know we did quite a bit of work on this about 2 years ago. And we came to some conclusions at the time, primarily around wide body services. Thinking about Jetstar coming in, it's still a narrow body aircraft. The current runway, the current infrastructure, the money we're spending for Jetstar doesn't impact the runway. It's simply fitting out the terminal. So we've got the current infrastructure. The other developments as well, the opportunity to reconsider the runway designation. So that work will carry on over the next 18 months. Would make a point that we have had some really positive engagement with central government in support of this as well, as we're thinking more holistically around national resilience and particularly the Upper North Island. So we'll keep you appraised on that. But I think, it's some events here that have given us some really positive and reasons to review the designation in the future of that. And I'll carry on the next slide actually with Titanium Park. This is a render of what Precinct North will look like. We're sort of starting on the top right-hand side, just above P is kind of where the first developments will start. If you were to develop a business park in the Waikato based on types of industries we have and the kind of size of businesses, that's sort of how it will look. You get some small buildings and some big buildings. So you've got some smaller buildings with lower roof heights closer to the runway. That's self-explanatory as to why we do that. And you'll see as part of activating what is largely a non-aeronautical development, the bottom left there is a freight hub. So that obviously a business park in the airport, there's an obvious opportunity for freight there. That freight hub also opens up an additional 11 hectares of aeronautical land. So we're actually increasing, call it the aeronautical footprint for aeronautical businesses about 30% through this development as well. That freight hub would be the second largest in New Zealand. So Christchurch are expanding New Zealand. And as a point of reference, Auckland does not yet have a dedicated freight hub, so it would be significant, obviously, as well. We are connected to two state highways and not that far from the main trunk railway line as well. thinking about multimodal connectivity and fastest growing part of the country. And just to our next slide on Precinct North.
So we're talking international freight coming in there.
Yeah, I think the caution I'd have here is that we're simply, I guess, demonstrating with master plan.
That's what you'd be aiming at.
Yeah, both domestic and international. So the way freight's transferred is changing, as we all know. As we tend to buy more online, the freight tends to be the volume has increased and needs to be moved quickly. So there's quite a bit of domestic air freight operating primarily between Auckland, Palmerston and Christchurch, and then dispersed from there. So there's that opportunity, but absolutely we're wanting to provide for the fact that of international freight maybe in a decade or
the capability. You want the capability.
Want the land there so that as a region, and particularly the nature of our shareholders, they will want us to make sure that we can respond to those sorts of opportunities.
That include equine?
Yeah, look, yes and no. Equine, of course, requires a lot of, as you know, additional facilities around looking after the horses and feeding zones and a much bigger piece of land. It doesn't preclude this, but this particular design is based on, I suppose, traditional freight. But as Scott mentioned, it opens up into the shark fin up to another 11 hectares of land, so that could be a potential. So we're just trying to make sure we try and maximise under the master plan as many opportunities as we can, as we currently are aware. Sorry, Scott. Yeah.
So this is the last slide for me on Precinct North. You'll see towards the top two properties highlighted in green. Those might be where compensation sites. So as part of the plan change process, we we offered an on-site ecological solution. Was agreed through the mediation process. They're actually better to have solutions off-site nearby and actually less land, but more concentrated development. So the largest of those sites is a bat habitat area or ecological reserve. It's actually under development now. So getting a bit of landscaping and I forget how many thousand trees, but lots of them being planted. So that's already started. And at the same time, as you look at that map towards the top of the main Precinct North development there in the white and the red, earthworks have now started on site for about 10 hectares of development. See a really good market for construction work and things at the moment, so opportunity to extend that out to 20 and get some efficiencies here as well. And as we alluded to, we've got our first design build on there, so a 3 hectare site with a rather large factory on it, so really complementary to airport activity, so in terms of height and reverse sensitivity, and it'll be great for the region as well. So it's a business that's in region that's looking to expand and relocate, so yeah, that's great, and we'll support, I forget, probably about 50 or 60 jobs initially. They've got option to expand as well. And then another one that's in a similar industry that we're under negotiation with. Obviously, Southern Links now is a road of national significance, is probably a value opportunity, but has also brought us more onto radars for particularly businesses out of town that are looking to make Waikato their home as we start to really actively market it. But I think you'll see, if you're at the airport anytime soon, you'll start to see, if you're looking out of the terminal, sort of look to your right a bit, you'll start to see some earthworks on the far side of the runway, and probably about June, I think you'll start to see the first building construction happen. So really great to positively see something happening after speaking to you for so long about it. With the view that we'll have mid next year our first tenant and our first rental income streams coming through the next 27 financial year. I'll just hand you on to Mark now for probably some of the more interesting stuff around Jetstar.
Right. And look, I should turn that on. Not that difficult, really, is it? It's a bit like going on a Teams meeting during COVID and you're on mute. How many times were we all caught out? Exactly. Okay, so look, Jetstar. Really what we're wanting to do here is just to give you a bit of an update, and we can go straight to the next slide, please. And look, some of this certainly Mayor Adrian and the other shareholding mayors and CEs were sort of fully briefed over the last 12 months. But really, this just reinforces the benefit of getting Jetstar into the Waikato. So you can see there's not only there's the indirect economic benefit to the region, creation of significant number of new jobs. We'll have 100,000 odd passengers flying in and out of the airport as a result. Not the commercial deal, whilst remains confidential between the airport company and the airline. The reason often for doing this work is to provide these sorts of opportunities for the region, as opposed to a significant benefit to the airport company in its own right. Although, as Scott mentioned, there is additional income streams as a result, but quite a significant investment by the company. And there is a significant risk in the sense that we need to make sure that the routes get utilised, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But look, everything remains on track. The terminal will be finished in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. And then it's a couple of months of finalising. Particularly, there's a huge amount of work required to become a security designated international airport. Our entire exposition has to be almost rewritten and approved by Civil Aviation Security. We're working with 7 agencies, so NPI, Customs, Immigration, Health, Police, and on it goes. So quite a significant piece of work, but I'm delighted that everything is on track. Jetstar had a team over, in fact, only yesterday, just checking that they're comfortable with progress.
Mark, sorry, just
yes.
on that, and I appreciate that commercial sensitivity of you, but obviously we putting a lot of money to, as Scott was saying, to get everything up and running, and so what one presumes that the arrangement with Jetstar, acknowledges the infrastructure upgrade that you guys have had to put in, and they're not going to leave us in the cold with a whole lot of resources and not used.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. So look, firstly, the commercial terms were such that we obviously want to ensure these things as best as possible over the initial 5-year term for the company. Certainly cash flow positive. What I would say around the investment, and we're spending close to $7 million by the time we have fitted out the terminal, finalised our other the car park and various other ancillary services and some of the commercial terms with the agencies. But look, what I would say is that 2 things really. One is that you've got to take a risk, commercial risk. It's a sensible, balanced risk. Could Jetstar remove? Obviously, absolutely they could. If it's not, if the routes aren't performing, then they will redeploy the aircraft, and contractually they can do that with a notice period, but they can do that. What I would say though is that the work we've done provides that terminal work means that we've completed the entire terminal. So it provides opportunities else for other airlines. What I'd also say is the way we've developed it with a capacity for domestic jet services as well. So we can provide aviation security, and we have within the northern end of the terminal, we will have international dwell zones, and we've also got a secure domestic dwell zone, so we can process and operate domestic jets. So it does create that capability for the future, which would have required investment if we were looking at jets later in this decade as well. So I think overall we've been as prudent as we can be, and the early signs are positive.
And I guess adding to that, you already had an international terminal from 20 years ago, so that was really useful to have that for your domestic flights there a few years back to get the domestic tidied up in the part of the building. So it sort of has all sort of fallen into place, and to receive this opportunity with Jetstar is quite significant. And it'll be very interesting to see whether it expands to more cities in Australia. I think we all agree that there's a lot of families across the ditch. It's not just tourism and business opportunities, it's also that connectivity with our families living abroad as well, isn't it? And so there's it's not just a one-dimensional opportunity. And I believe some of those early flights are already booked out.
Yeah, well, there's we often find with Trans-Tasman that the booking period is really 3 months prior to travel. So from April onwards is when the rubber hits the road. But what we would say is that the early signs are strong for the Gold Coast and okay for Sydney. So Jetstar are comfortable with the bookings to date. And what I would say though is that we have a very even, ironically, spread into Sydney and out of Sydney. Of course, Gold Coast is far stronger outbound than it is inbound. And make no further comment about that. But and the other point that we're not speaking too strongly about yet, but certainly the connectivity into Sydney does provide global connectivity on the Qantas group. And you can potentially interline out of Hamilton. At the moment, you could interline out of Hamilton through Sydney with about a 90-minute connection through to London. So there are those, not all services interline well within the Qantas group, or else the delay is too long. In Sydney, the transit time is too long. But look, that will improve. And as they start to realign schedules over the next couple of years, I think that's also the real opportunity.
Yeah, because there's with this happening, there's a real pressure on, you hear a lot of pressure around planes and having, because that's the other thing, isn't it? That is the big picture, is are there enough planes out there to meet the demand? And I guess Jetstar, that's their problem, but that could be a risk to this program.
You're absolutely right, Mayor. There's globally there's a shortage of aircraft. The fortunate position for Jetstar and for Qantas is that they made decisions on procurement during COVID, which they also retained their fleet. So Jetstar have a dozen new aircraft or something similar stock coming on stream. So Jetstar and the Qantas group are in a very good position.
That's very reassuring. Well, let's carry on.
Okay.
Sorry, Peter.
Just one question. Once Jetstar is operating over there in the terminals, we've done everything. What's the possibility of Air New Zealand jumping on board and flying out of Hamilton, say 1 or 2 flights?
Well, we'd love Air New Zealand to jump on board. Competition is good for everyone, right? I think the challenge there, and the Mayor alluded to it, there's a much wider challenge for Air New Zealand at the moment. They have an aircraft shortage, which is constraining their global opportunities. You would have heard Greg Foran even on the recent mission to India saying that they wouldn't have aircraft available for an India route until I think about 2028. So there is a major challenge both on the regional fleet for Air New Zealand and on their national and long haul schedules. So you never know, right? Airlines make the decisions, we don't, but we certainly foster those relationships with Air New Zealand.
Kevin, you've got a question?
Yeah, just wondered, are they looking at other destinations as well, Melbourne and Perth? I mean, was that wide body stuff they need to do those? Or
not at all. The narrow body jets can cover Australia. No, look, I think the view that we have and the view that Jetstar has is let's get these two up and running and sorted. And but look, suffice to say, we do engage with other airport companies, and ultimately we will do the research and provide the information to the airlines around what we think is the route viability. And then, so those conversations, I guess what I would say now is that we have credibility, that we have the service in place, and it gives us, I think, better credibility to now talk to other Australasian airports and airlines. And we'll be doing that as part of our day job.
Right.
Okay. Can I just ask a question? You said before the debt for Hampton Airport is going to go from 20 million to 70 million. Yes. You just said at the start of that this process of putting in this international terminal is going to cost about 7 million. Is there more cost off the back end of that when you say 7 million, or is the debt lamp not blowing up but increasing for something else on top of that?
I think just to clarify that significant increase in debt is property related. So that's a design build and precinct north. Between those two is about 30 million. and we're getting a commercial return of that investment. And the second design build, Scott mentioned, will generate an extra 4 million in rent in effect by 2027. So all of that additional debt is able to fund the buildings as well as the land development in its own right. So it's measured debt. Yeah, we're not spending your money.
No,
It's all good.
where we're going.
Yeah.
All right. If we can move on, and I'm just going to flick through these next slides. I won't spend time. This is just giving you a sense of the relationships we're building between Hamilton Waikato Tourism, ourselves, the Australian airports, the New South Wales and Queensland tourism organisations, Tourism New Zealand. So we're working hard on both the inbound and the outbound partnerships to drive passengers onto those seats. You may have even heard actually just on the radio in the last couple of weeks, there's now some radio advertising for into the Gold Coast, etc. So Nick will cover a bit more up on the inbound, but that just gives you a bit of a concise view of who's involved. And if we just keep moving on, this just gives you an indication of the key focus areas, particularly, and obviously the airport has got a vested interest in both the outbound to Australia and the inbound from Australia. The RTO is, of course, more focused on bringing visitors into the region. We're focused on both. So they're kind of the three areas that, as an airport company, we will either be initiating or being in partnership with the RTO and with other organisations. And if we keep moving, these are just an example of some of the tactical sales that's in market at the moment. These are often Jetstar initiated social media or advertising, and then we pick up those and we brand them into Hamilton Airport and remarket them through our distribution channels and social media. So just a good sort of flavour of the stuff that's going on, and we can just sort of keep moving through the same here. This is the direct partnership stuff with the Gold Coast. The Queensland Destination Queensland and Queensland airports are incredibly well funded, and they're able to actually apply a lot of focus resource, financial resource and HR resource into these campaigns. So it's been some really good stuff going on. Obviously, the cyclone recently hasn't been a great help, but it looks like they'll have the beaches back in place by April. So, but that's just another example. And if we just go, I think it's only Sydney. Sydney, we're working. We've been a couple of our teams just over in Sydney a week or so ago, meeting with Sydney Airport, with Tourism New Zealand, and with Destination New South Wales. We've got a bit of work to do with Sydney in terms of getting, and it just so happens that most of their activity will fall into the next financial year. And of course, we've got to work hard with Sydney Airport because, you know, we're one dot on 100 dots that they serve. So, but we've established some really good connections with the marketing team and senior management team at Sydney Airport. And I think we'll see more promotional activity out of there. You know, you can carry on, please, in the coming 12 months. Obviously, the first flight's in June. The flight in from Sydney on Monday the 16th is our main celebratory event. And at this stage, still waiting on final confirmation, but we're hoping that Minister Upston will be there to, in fact, will be on board that flight coming in with myself and the Jetstar CE and others. And we have made a big thing of inviting the Prime Minister. Unfortunately, it's a Monday, it's a cabinet meeting, and it's the first cabinet meeting after the recess the previous week with field days. So it's We'll be limited on ministerial representation, but we've invited all of the local either cabinet ministers or MPs of our region and the feeder regions, of course, as well as our mayors, CEs, and other dignitaries. So we'll make something of that arrival, and I think we should get good publicity around it. We then have the Wednesday departure to the Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast have got a very significant event on the arrival of that flight into the Gold Coast on the Wednesday evening, and we'll be on that as well, just to sort of further sort of drum up profile and support. So it's not far away. I think I can just really want to sum up 2 slides very quickly, so you can see our focus really for the, and it's answering perhaps some of the questions some of you have already raised of us this morning, but we'll continue to drive this Trans-Tasman relationship to really fill these aircraft, and we'll be committing the resources that we need to for that. And we're hoping, of course, that the central government will provide further funding around tourism initiatives. Obviously, tourism and their growth strategy for the economy very much works well for us. Australia is an important market from a tourism destination point of view. So we've been working very hard in that space, and that I guess the reinforcement, the criticality of the RTO being able to respond to those opportunities. We will continue with our advocacy, our work on both other international routes and airlines, and also we'll have a strong focus on how can we get domestic jet services into Hamilton over the next couple of years as a result of the provisioning work we've done. So quite a big piece of work there. And then finally, before I run out of breath, I would just sort of say to you that we've had a very successful 10-year strategy. That's we're in about year 7 of. We've committed with the board to have a look at our strategy again this year. So we have the 2 big pieces of work are the aeronautical strategy, and we have an external consultant that we've just appointed just to have a look now with the knowledge of recent years. When we did the last aeronautical strategy, we didn't have an international airline. So how does the next 10 years look? The strength of the region, the importance of Hamilton Airport to the Upper North Island and to New Zealand Inc. As an alternative airport. So a lot of work to go into just is there anything else that we're missing around the property strategy, around the aeronautical strategy? And we are doing a similar piece of work with property, and that will lead to a presentation, I think, at this stage to our shareholding mayors and CEs at our AGM in November. So that work's going on, and with the hotel, the same kind of approach. Really, we're considering where to with the hotel over the next decade. So we will have owned it for that 6 or 7 year period. We've got a 10-year management contract. So what's our next steps with the hotel? That's it.
Right.
Just a quick question. Where am I going to park?
You're going to park in the car park.
Yeah, you meaning you would have had to make a bit of extension for that.
Yeah, look, we're doing 2 things. We, if you can imagine, if you're driving past the front of the terminal and you're driving out of the airport, the land to the left will be developed with an additional 250 car parks. That there's just that work will be underway sort of April, May. And we'll be ready. So yes, we have that.
That's part of the decision when you leave from the Waikato rather than.
Yeah, no, that's right. The challenge, of course, is we have to estimate at this point the length of stay, and it's much longer, of course, when you're going to Australia versus if you're travelling domestically. We thought the length of stay on average is about sort of 4 to 5 days, but it's proven to be a bit longer in the advanced bookings. So, but we will have enough car parking.
Great question, Sue.
Dropped off too, right?
it's very easy to be dropped off.
Valet parking, to be quite honest, so I don't have to
Right.
deal with that.
Open
Oh, sorry, Peter.
I don't get a total question. Why is it dearer to park at Hamilton Airport than Auckland?
Well, it's not.
Is it not?
No.
Okay.
No, look, I mean, I think we've got, it's a comparison of apples with apples. If you want to park and walk across the road to the terminal in Auckland, you'll pay $50 or $60 a day, and you'll pay $20 a day with us. If you want to park and ride some distance from the airport, yes, you can do that for maybe $15 to $20 a day, but you've got the inconvenience of a park and ride. So I think, and if you want to do valet parking at Auckland Airport, you're about $90 a day.
Well, that's not for me. That.
No,
I think,
but I think generally
Safety.
we need to compare apples with apples.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nicola. We're on to it now.
Maria, hopefully presentation tomorrow. Thank you.
Oh,
I've got Councillor Stevens, thank you. Before I kick off, just congratulations, Mania. I think that's a great appointment. Pleased to see you at the top of the table. Well done, councillors. I think it's great that you recognise what's right under your nose. So thank you for us being here. I didn't see a report in your agenda, so I'm not sure if it's in your agenda. Is it there?
No,
Not sure what.
it's all right. Just
To that, so
flow on through.
we'll flow on through. I had asked for the presentation to not go in there because there's a few surprise moments in here. So just reminding that this is our report for our first 6 months, July to December. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing now, which some things are hot off the press for you. Our brand colours look different on every screen. So these are a rather bright version of our brand and our KPIs that are in that report. So these are our KPIs and our service level agreement for this year. Obviously the green are met. The red is the withdrawal of funding from Waitoma and Aotearoa. When we set these KPIs, we didn't quite know where they were going to land, and they did withdraw. So that is why that is red. It has had a little bit of an impact on our industry contribution because that, of course, took out a number of operators, but we have met that KPI anyway. So we've got great supportive members on board. The orange, they are actually orange, not yellow. They do look yellow on your screen. We're well underway to meeting all of those, so there's no concern at this point. It is they are just orange and yellow because we're 6 months into the year. So we're well on target for meeting all of those. We can keep clicking on through, please. So this was what was the surprise and moment. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. It only went live last week. We've changed our campaign activities this year and trying something new. Rather than running 10 plus smaller campaigns, we've gone for 2. And this is the first of those. We'll do a spring and an autumn edition. A little bit bold, a little bit cheeky, a little bit quirky to try and catch some attention media-wise. And it has. Stuff, the Wellington Post and New Zealand Herald have picked this up as a different approach to our marketing activity. So it's a play on Sophie and Mike here are lost in the mighty Waikato. Their family in Auckland, their grown children are wondering who on earth is going to look after their grandchildren, look after the children for a while. Where are the babysitter's gone? And then we cut really quickly so that it's quite obvious it's not a missing person. To Sophie and Mike having an amazing time down here and losing themselves or finding themselves down here in our tranquil landscapes. So far, the feedback has been really positive online. There's been a couple of people, as you expect with Facebook people, taking the negative approach and negative comments. Surprise, surprise. But look, Facebook people have also self-regulated that and have seen the quirky side and corrected those people's attitudes towards it. So it's got longevity. The next version for autumn will probably be, and I'm not going to give too much away, but the other side of it, the adult children coming on down to find the grandparents, and then maybe the children are off running rampant in some of our great places and spaces.
Just Nicola, it was an attachment further down on our agenda. So
we get scroll far enough. Sorry. So you've all done your reading, so that's great. So what we've done with this campaign as well that we've not done before, in our members portal, for our members, we've provided a whole lot of assets for them to also utilise in their own online activity. So the missing banner, the selfie of Sophie and Mike, they can place that over their own imagery and share that too. So that helps to amplify the cut through. So far, we're 2 weeks into the 6-week campaign, and our algorithms and our reporting are looking really incredible. So we're getting some really good click-through rates. So far, we're really happy with the performance, but we'll, obviously analyse at the end of that. So a little bit different, a little bit quirky, but we're up for it. Next one, please. Thank you. So Mark's already talked a lot about Jetstar, but I wanted to give a touch base on what we've been doing. What I think was also worthy of pointing out, we're focusing on Australia, and that is where we're all putting activity into. But what happens with Jetstar is, of course, it connects into the Qantas network. So through the Sydney leap, Hamilton is now the gateway really for the world to come to our place. So through connectivity through Qantas, they can fly from any of the Qantas destinations with a short stopover. I think it's 90 minutes in Sydney, and then into Hamilton Airport. So it does make us a lot more connected to the world. It's not just Australia, but that is where our focus has been. We'll move on through. Thank you. Mark's already shared some of these billboards through. So with the airport team and our own team, they developed, I think there were about 10 versions of these for electronic Bishop billboards into Sydney and Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Massive billboards along the highways and some smaller ones in the airports. Obviously, we had Hobbiton as a hero front and centre. The numbers were phenomenal, and so that's why I wanted to share that. 3 million impressions per week, and they're up for 6 months. So 77 million impressions. Yeah, I had to look at those numbers a couple of times because it's an incredible cut through. So we're really proud of that quick joint venture, very quick turnaround activity when that opportunity came up with Bishop signage for our two teams to be able to push that through really quickly. An impression is the amount of times it's come up on the screen.
Oh, just online. Okay.
On the screens on the side of the highway.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Fishing things. Right.
Yeah. So that's not counting the number of people driving past them to know how many people it's actually reached. It's the number of times those billboards have come up. Next slide, please. So our board have allowed us, luckily, with the reduced funding that we've suffered for this financial year and onwards, we didn't plan for this. We didn't plan for international activity. We'd reduced our staff, our budgets were rebalanced, but what we did have is a little bit of a savings, salary savings, and we had a little bit of cash reserves in the bank that our board have allowed us to utilise to activate our Australian activity. It's not going to last forever, but it is fantastic at the moment. So the next two slides, I'll talk about this one first, is the activity that we've had already underway. As you can see, AIM, IMM have already happened. So AIM is an event in Melbourne aimed at incentive market, incentive and conferences. So we attended that alongside Hobbiton Movie Set. The Hobbit Hole was built there as well, and the cut through was incredible. So we've already had some really strong inquiries about bringing incentive groups over from Australia and conferences directly into our region. IMM is International Media Marketplace, IMM. So that's for travel media. So that was held in Sydney in February, and Taj had a conference the first day and then pre-arranged appointments. I'm not sure what the number was actually off the top of my head, 25, I think, to meet with international media who are interested, travel writers who are interested in our stories and our place. Already got some of those media on the way here to write stories. Sunrise TV, now that's the Australian Sunrise TV, 10th of March. Since I've sent you that presentation, it was delayed because of the cyclone in Gold Coast. So it's now happening this Monday. They'll arrive in our region on Sunday, and they're doing live weather feeds directly from Hobbiton Movie Set into Australia's morning breakfast TV. So that'll have great coverage for us. And they are only going to our neighbouring regions. And so that is great for our Jetstar Alliance, because obviously we're also the gateway for our neighbouring regions. So that's great to have that coverage. RTO IBO Day, now that's regional tourism organisations and inbound operators, Auckland-based inbound operators. Was held a couple of weeks ago. That was 2 days, 58 appointments, speed dating, yep, 12-minute appointments with those inbound tour operators. So there were some who had markets off further afield than Australia, but our focus was Australia and getting some really good cut through with those conversations. None of that activity was planned until September and the Jetstar announcement and releasing some of our funds. Next slide, please. These ones are things that are coming up. The only thing on here that we were going to be doing was the Explore show. So Explore is an RTO-run event with our neighbouring Explore Central North Island regional tourism organisations. Held in Auckland, again, those Auckland inbound tour operators, appointments, and we'll talk solely about Australia. That one we were going to be attending. Trends in Rotorua, great opportunity right next door. We've always attended Trends. We didn't have the budget for it this year. We were going to collaborate or coordinate the regional presence for our operators, but not attend. We will now have a staff member there and a stand and an appointment stream. While there'll be other buyers from other markets further afield, our focus is really to try and have those appointment stream focused on Australia market. Know My North is a new event. It's a North Island Regional Tourism Organisation collaboration. So all of the North Island RTOs collaborating, going offshore again to talk to travel trade, to attract visitors to the North Island. The South Island have been doing this for years, and we've never had time, resource, capacity to do this. So this is first up into Sydney and Melbourne, and there's talk that maybe it'll be a Sydney, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne alternate years. And then we've got some regional females that we'll be bringing people in through the leveraging of trends and meetings, bringing people in to showcase from Australia to showcase our region. Again, some of that stuff only Explore was budgeted for. So it's been a bit of a tough old ask on our budget and our team. So with the release of a little bit more, thank you to our board, look at Mark, he's on our board, we will be bringing on a 24-hour-a-week person to help us with this activity, fixed term, because our reserves will not last forever without additional funding coming from somewhere. That can't continue. Thank you. Regional Boost Fund. We are thrilled to see tourism as the 5th item on the government's list for the Going for Growth plan, and tourism's had quite a bit of coverage lately. The Regional Boost Fund was announced by our new Tourism and Hospitality Minister, Louise Upston. Fantastic appointment. 3 or 4 weeks ago now, it's been a bit of a whirlwind journey actually. To all of us RTOs, we were in Auckland for a meeting. She came along and announced this fund. It's a very quick turnaround, very quick, high impact fund. It's 3 million across the country. It's a contestable fund, so we had to apply for the funding. It is only for RTOs. It is only for collaborations of RTOs. We cannot apply alone. It is for bringing international visitors in the next 4 months into our country. Activity from April to July for arrivals up until September. So it is to fill the seats for the winter period. So it's a lot quicker turnaround than what we normally as RTOs work. We're normally working next summer, the summer after. So it's high impact, quick turnaround. Our applications are in. We're hoping to have news the end of this week. That's when it's scheduled. We've put our name to 2 collaborations. One is the whole country collaboration in focusing the Northern American market. And the other one is the north of the North Island. So our 8 Explore Central North Island groups and Auckland and Northland to focus on the Australian market with a line there specifically for our Hamilton Airport Jetstar activation. Hopefully, keep our fingers crossed, touch wood, do all of those things. We have some good news by the end of the week. That's what I've got to share with you today. So we've got some different things happening. We're doing our best we can to support our neighbour, our shareholder, and the amazing opportunity that we've got there with the Australian market.
Thank you, Nicola. There's certainly a lot of opportunity there, and acknowledging the constraint on funds, and I guess it is what it is. Yeah. Any questions for Nicola or any further questions for the team with Rob? Oh, it's been a fairly comprehensive, quite exciting though, isn't it? When you've got, something new happening, it reinvigorates everywhere. I can feel the sense of energy in the team. That's natural, right? So yeah, all the best with the developments. So
I was just going to say, is that 3 million that the government's trying out for urgency going to be achievable? Because that's a tough thing. Yeah, you don't have to answer that, but that's a bit desperate, isn't it?
It's been an interesting
Especially when
ride.
you've got no planes to bring them in. But anyway, that's okay.
I would imagine there's capacity to bring them in.
Okay.
The turnaround of the activity has been fairly frantic, and look, we're really pleased to be in line. If it was individual RTOs, we would have struggled because we're only 6 people on the ground, and we're already elevated our activity that we hadn't planned for with our Australian activity. So if it was individual RTOs, we would have had an issue. It's not available for resourcing. So we're pleased it was collaborations with other RTOs, and we're pleased that some of our neighbours, they are better resourced, and we're pleased to have been taken under their wing. But we have a lot of activity to do with the Australian Hamilton Jetstar project line piece.
The shoulder season as well. So at least from an airline capacity perspective, it's not December, January, February timing. So that helps.
Actually, I'll tap into that. That's an interesting point. It is for they're looking specifically for regions who have capacity. So some of our southern regions don't. So it's quite an interesting algorithm that they'll be looking at for allocating those funds.
And I was at Hobson on Saturday, 1,700 people added to the economy. And we have people, there was people flying in from New York saying, I've got nowhere to stay that night before. So pretty amazing, to help there.
because was a 60-40 split, international domestic?
Yes, Russell will tell you all of that, definitely.
So we had a really busy weekend for events in the region with Balloons Up Wakato, Tūranga Waiwai Regatta, we had Haka at the Gardens, and the Halfling Marathon here in your patch. 47% were from offshore. So that's a phenomenal amount. We just need to talk Russell into trying to extend it somehow and make it bigger. I'm not sure.
Oh, he was excited by the end of the day. Yeah.
And like with the glorious weather.
Saying we could double this staff, and they're going, no.
Yeah, the weather helped hugely because it's glorious.
It was hot.
Early autumn.
I wasn't running, by the way.
Right, well, we'll move on. If there's no further questions, I will just ask Councillor for the recommendation in front of them that the report that he received, and all right through just to approve the airport draft statement of intent. Yep, and then number 3 is obviously to receive following reports. Move James Sainsbury, second Kevin Tappan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, and thanks for a very exciting report, really, isn't it?
It is.
A lot of vision and moving forward. Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to the second item, which is the CCO monitoring, which gets including Niall and Charlotte.
Alrighty, good morning, everyone. So this report is for the draft statement of intent and half-yearly report from Waikato Local Authority Shared Services Limited, trading as CoLab. CoLab is jointly owned by the 12 councils in the region, and Matamata-Piako District Council has a shareholding of 8.33%. CoLab's aim is to increase council collaborations to maximise community wellbeing. To note in the half-yearly report, the report states with only 3 councils confirming they wish to continue the use of CoLab Landing, the services will be disestablished at the 30th of June 2025, but will be operational up until that date. So council has been asked to review and consider the half-yearly report and the draft statement of intent for CoLab. I'm happy to take the report as read and take any questions or feedback from council.
Any questions? It's obviously been obviously with the waters work, if we didn't have CoLab, that would have been harder to pull some collaboration together. I know I hear staff referring to other council staff and other districts where they've collaborated through CoLab. So it's a huge, so we're not operating in the silo as what many might think, that there is that cooperation across the region through the CoLab vehicle, basically.
Oh, absolutely. I think I met with the chair and CEO last month, and they were asking all CEOs, going around seeing them all and asking us to reflect on CoLab and its performance. And there's some disappointment within CoLab that they've investigated some things that haven't taken off. But I think that's the nature of the beast in collaboration to an extent. You float an idea, and there are some that are more willing than others. But I think the thing that I like about CoLab and the Waikato Water's done well, none of the local authorities had the capacity to provide some of the grunt to our own people to get to the stage where we had a heads of agreement. That was a pretty awesome piece of work on their part. But I think, to your point, Adrian, looking forward, we have a vehicle here that encourages shared services. Shared services is a mantra that's coming out of the government that they're wanting to see. I think even though not if on behalf of the company, they're disappointed that something didn't fly. I said, that's how it is with local government, but we're positioned and there's still some very, very good things happening. So from my perspective, in terms of the company, I get feedback I gave them is, I'd rather that you're in our frame rather than not being in our frame, because it will be so much harder for us to collaborate without this vehicle.
Part of it says in the vision and the strategy is all shareholders take up at least one additional shared service. Can you give us some examples of the ones that you might be thinking about looking at?
The ones that we're actually involved right now have been very, very successful. So in the roading area, for example, so we've got the RATA, which you would have heard reference to the RATA group, where rules change, thinking changes, policy changes, and so RATA, the CoLab people, get all of our roading people together, both strategically and operationally, to work through those rules. So we're doing them on a consistent, we're not reinventing the wheel. That's probably been one of the most successful ones that we've actually had, is actually that RATA one, and that's expanded now into, it has expanded into the waters area. They wanted to replicate that model, and we're very keen on that shared knowledge. It has expanded into the community facilities and parks and reserves area, because there's been a big gap for us, or probably most authorities, I'd say, apart from the biggies. So that kind of asset strategy and operational collaboration is really good for us. There'll be from time, here's another one that we've just entered into, which is about saving us time. We were in it before, but we've gone into it again. Most of the local authorities use the same consultancy firms. If you go to every council in the Waikato, there's about 4 or 5 firms that we all use to some extent. But we all have to go through our own procurement processes to engage them on projects. CoLab have formed a board, if you like, or a panel. They did all that work. Our company did that work for us rather than our own procurement people doing it, so that we have an agreement to use them. They have tested the market for us, so that they're ensuring they're getting good rates. So we're party to that, because it saves our people a lot of time. So that's a grassroots thing.
It's just with this greater amalgamation future that we're going to look at in the future, right? This will lead to that.
Well, look, I think what it does is it gives you an alternative to actually amalgamating.
Yeah.
It gives you an alternative. You can get the same efficiency gains
and
by
keep your autonomy.
And potentially keep your, so that's good. That's why I like the fact that they're in our frame.
Yeah.
But I do know they were disappointed. You would have read it in the report. Yeah. Their chair was disappointed about a particular project. I had to say to them, I've been in this game for a long time. I've seen this before. Yes, you don't get everybody necessarily. It's sometimes hard. But the fact that CoLab are putting these issues in front of us and doing this work, I don't see that as a waste of time at all. Some will work, some won't. But they're driving it, which I think is a real positive from my perspective.
And a lot of the stuff isn't visible in the community. I think that's the
No.
biggest thing.
It's not
operational.
visible. It's
Yeah.
not visible here.
Yeah, because it's
In many
operational. It's operational, but it's great to hear that there are efficiency benefits, there's effectiveness, there might be some cost savings, but ultimately an improvement in probably what council's achieving.
Absolutely.
Right. Gary.
Yes, just wanted to comment. I think one of the greatest values for people like me who sit in these co-op mic seats is that there's more voices saying the sorts of things that I talk about across a number of key projects in the district. So I think it is great, but absolutely great.
Great, thanks for that feedback, Gary. Any further questions, feedback? We'll go to the recommendation then that we receive the report and that we approve the statement of intent for the 2025-26, or is it 3? I'm presuming it's 1 and 2. So
we've got 2A and 2B, and then number 3, which just happens to run on just directly below B. So
okay.
2 separate points.
So 3.
So I would, Your Worship, be happy to move the report 1 and 2A and 3.
Fabulous. Thank you, Caleb. Move Caleb, seconded. Russell, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll break for morning tea. to do that. Thank you. Thanks. So welcome back, everyone. We are now moving on to our next agenda item, which is our order of candidates, 7.3, and our communication principles. So thanks, Tamara.
We're just here to seek a decision on those two items identified in the purpose. So a decision on the order of candidates' names to appear on the voting documents, and also understanding and approving the election communication principles for the elections.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Obviously, we were random last time. Is there a view to change it back, or are we sticking with random? Caleb, you've got your light on?
Just reading through the principles. How would you explain that to the average voter? Because I had a hard time linking what the principles said versus what the adjustments to standing orders is for.
Oh no, that's separate. That's not
sorry for the communications. And I thought, well, this is a bit odd. So perhaps I misunderstood. Could you please enlighten me as to how you came to the conclusion you came to, and perhaps it's a bit of stupidity on my part.
Not at all. These principles were provided by the Controller and Auditor General quite a few years ago. So it's the main ones are that council staff cannot help promote any standing candidate in the elections, and that we can't can't use any of our materials, any of our logos,
or our channel,
or resources, anything.
We're on our own.
Yeah.
And like with my Facebook page, that will go down, because it's me, I can't electioneer through that channel. That's the basic thing. It is a legislative direction that was released in April 2024. Hence, that's why we're coming to us now, because it's new since the last election. Are there any further questions? Is everyone happy to go with random? Yes.
I'm happy to move random, and that we adopt the principles under.
Thank you, Bruce. Move Bruce, seconded James Thainsbury. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. That was easy. Now we'll move on to your next item, Tamara, which is the standing orders.
Thank you. So the standing orders have been reviewed and the legislation has been updated so that we can have members attending online either visually or audio visual. Audio or audio visual, and they will count towards a quorum. So previously we haven't had that. So we are seeking approval to have our standing orders amended to include that condition. There are some regulations around that. It's not that it's every week we show up to a meeting online. It's basically if you're overseas, you're on maternity leave, you are not well or something along those lines. And of course, requires approval by the chairperson. And the other two I'm looking for is the public forums. So currently we have public forums. Any community members can approach us the day prior to a meeting, and it is at the chairperson's or the CEO's discretion as to whether we accept that public forum or not. But what we're seeking is to have 3 clear working days so that we can prepare ourselves and the community member. And the third point is to extend the time frame for deputations, which is slightly different to a public forum. So a deputation is having a member of the community wanting to present a report to council, and they can provide it as an agenda item, and therefore the item can be debated by council and a resolution made. And so that one at the moment is at 5 working days, and we're hoping to extend that to 7 clear working days so that it aligns with our agenda cut-off times.
Yeah, that I reckon does make sense, because your agenda is your agenda, and that, otherwise it's a late item, and that gets more complicated. with the public forums, I think we had quite a long lead in, then we went to a short lead in, so we're looking to be more in the middle so that there's some planning and process around it, because it's only one clear day, it's a very short snap decision to fit it in, especially if we've already got a public forum booked or whatever that may be, what our day is about. So any questions?
I just have one really around the clarification of the recommendation with the standing order. So number 2, standing orders amended to reflect Schedule 7 Local Government Act, but allows provision for council committee minutes to attend meeting by audio visual links as follows. And it was just on your point, Mara, it was just around a genuine reason not to be there, and also the chairperson's discretion. Does that need to be in the recommendation, or is that covered?
It's covered in the standing order.
Yeah, I thought it possibly would be, but I'm happy to move it, but I just wonder if we want that clarification in there. That's all.
Noting that the legislation noting there's an expectation that members will attend in person.
And discretion too.
It's only a note to the.
Otherwise, I'm happy with all the rest of it. I'm happy with it.
No.
So, Bruce, you got a question?
Well, just an understanding. This deputations, where I can now understand what you mean by that. But if we have to close, if we have the agenda closing with 7 days, should the request for a deputation be 8 days to give you that time to?
Yes.
Eh?
Yeah, that's a good question, Bruce, because that's the other thing, is it suddenly it appears on your desk at 7 days, you're preparing this,
You've got time. Yeah. So So well, I would think deputation should be received at least 8 working days, and that allows you to
one day prior to indicating rather than giving it a number.
Yeah.
So whatever the otherwise the closing off date is of day.
Well, it's 7 days, the thing due to close off date, so it is it's 8 working days.
Yeah, it's
So James, you we haven't got to that point yet, we're still in the discussion. Sharon?
And does that 8 working days fall into, should there be a state holiday?
That's not a working day.
No, it's not a working day.
So another day extended again. It's weekends and statutory holidays, so it's working days when the office is open on a working day.
So could I just add as well, for this item, we would require at least 75% of the quorum to vote on this.
To approve
it.
Yep. Good point. That's all right. That's for this recommendation. Yeah.
If that out of quorum, that you should get a chance to move, second, and vote as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's full
right.
Right, which is great. It's just for extenuating circumstances. It's not just because you can't. Basically. Right, so I've got moved, James, seconded, Bruce. Any further discussion? Because I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, can we just get a show of hands around the room just to make sure we've definitely got clear 75% majority just for standing?
And it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We will now move on to Lania, Lania and Anne now. It's Sandra, are you sitting in on this one as well? Or?
Yes. Lania is definitely the lead on this one.
So it's our item 7.5, our UAGC decision for the annual plan 2025-2026. It's quite a lot of work on into the complication of revals is a two problem stance with this one. So you want to introduce it, Anne or Sandra?
I can briefly introduce unless Vinaya would like to while we wait for Lania. So basically the purpose of this report is to seek a council decision on how it wishes to set this UAGC for the upcoming financial year. Council have been briefed on the fact that our property revaluations have been delayed significantly this year, and it's going to be very, very close deadline. We are expecting approval on the 27th of June, which is a Friday, and your annual plan must be adopted on Monday, the 30th of June. So it is a very tight deadline. So what we're bringing to you is all of the decisions that you could make beforehand to make this a really smooth process. And I will.
That's the best part. Yeah,
hand over to
Lania. Sorry, Lania, it's been a bit of a juggle this morning, but all good. We turn lights off.
Yeah, give me lights on.
So probably just to remind you of what's in our recommendations this morning. Obviously, the first 2 points are just noting the fact that we've had this delayed revaluation. So not till the 27th of June will we know that we're going to be adopting rates based on the 21 or the 24 valuations. The third point in our recommendation is that council needs to set a UAGC cap, taking into account some considerations in our policy. Part A is if we're using the 2024 valuation, where will we set our UAGC cap? And part B is if we're basing on the 2021 valuation, where would we set our UAGC cap? I think from discussions on the previous workshop, the part B might be the easier discussion to knock off perhaps this morning. So if you want to discuss that, if we're setting the rates based on the 2021 valuation, is there any considerations that would cause you to move your UAGC cap from the current 27.5%?
Well, it's just reflecting on the UAGC completely. So are there any before anyone puts the position forward, are there any questions from the information that's been provided, some clarification? So I think it's really helpful to show the general rate separate from the targeted rate. There's a significant difference between rate payers. Is there any comment? Any questions? I think we've been given a lot of information. It's quite challenging to get your head around when a targeted rate is a fixed amount versus a percentage general rate increase and how that reflects in different properties that receive services. And it does distort a rate increase as a result, doesn't it? Are there any further comments? I guess the thing is why do we adjust the UAGC? If we're using the 2021 valuations, or are we looking to change the UAGC regardless? What's people's views? Are we, if we look at, as Lania suggests, if our valuations aren't available?
Left-hand side is a 2001.
No, sorry, but what I put in front of you today is
right-hand one's on 2024 revaluation. And the left-hand side doesn't.
It's a general rate. It's
general and total.
So sorry, it's a different format to the one you looked at last time. So this, So no, this is from your report today. Okay. So the first one is just looking at just the general rate impact, which is what the UAGC impacts, and the second one is the total rates impact.
Okay. Yeah.
So it shows.
Reading it properly now.
Yeah, it shows where the targeted rates are included and how that works with those that are on general rate only. And noting that we've got such a broad range of residential, many property units, really is residential, lifestyle, commercial, and rural. Mm-hmm. So I guess the first question is around the valuations, because traditionally UAGCs have been triggered. The change in UAGC has been triggered by a significant change in valuations, which has created a major swing in general rate increases for a property, a particular property. But of course, if we look at one in isolation, it's what do other properties, where do other properties get affected as well? So just want to generate some discussions and debate because.
Yeah, I think that just a highlight of the draft evaluation information we're being given at the moment is that basically the dairy properties have dropped down, residential have stayed about the same, and the commercial and then lifestyle property have increased. So that's sort of how the general rate shifts between those properties. So and those commercial lifestyle properties that have shifted up tend to be higher value properties as well. So if you're shifting the UAGC cap lower, it impacts them more.
That's a very good summation. And from my point of view, I think it's been a general perception that the UAGC is to sort of get that real balance between the residential and the rural. And yet, when you look at it, in this occasion, the ones that impact the greatest are the commercial and the lifestyle. I see no reason to change whatsoever, whether it's at the 21 or the 20.
Bruce, stop reading my note. I actually agree with Councillor Griffin that there is no, as it was said to us, a compelling reason. So I would be, very happy to stay with 27.5% behind evaluation and looking at.
Kevin.
Balance has not changed since last time. I think there is a compelling reason. I think we've got a tool in the toolbox. We need to use it. If we're not using it, you can get rid of it.
Any other comments?
I just want to say that the information you gave me on the historic changes made more sense to me as to where we've been and where we're going and so on. So yeah, it sort of opened my eyes to what the situation is. Yes,
I guess the fascinating thing will be is when the waters go out, when with the water services and how that will change the rates and the perception of rates for those receiving services. The interesting point there, Dave.
I just wonder, when we're looking at UAGC, obviously we're taking in, how the valuation has shifted their rates responsibility. Is it just that the UAGC takes into account, or is there also some if there's economic factors that are going on around that helps us to make rates for a group that's more affected by this? Is that also something that we should be considering? So, I guess that's my personal question.
I think if I can just comment, and I loathe to get involved in areas of policy where it's your discretion. So trying to stay away from political side. The way that Lani has structured the report is she's listed the considerations in your policy. And that's actually for us, is really interesting to test the policy, to say, well, we wrote these things at the time. Now we're in the process of applying the policy. And I guess what I'd say in response to your question is, do the considerations on page 131 bullet pointed, do they cover your issue or not? And if they should, because that's one of the learnings out of this, then we tweak the pot, you know what I mean? And I think from our perspective as staff, what we try and do when we look at these issues, we try to not only look at what's in front of us now, but what might happen in the future. So the discussion is very good for us because it helps us get clarity about whether we need to look at changing the policy. But in the first instance, as I say, what Lani has done is said, here are the 4 bullet points that you can consider, whether it's the 2021 revaluation or non-revaluation or the 2024, they both apply. So I guess my question to you would be, given your point about wider potential economic impacts that might be occurring that we're aware of, do any of those bullet points there, does it fall under any of those bullet points? I'd suggest it doesn't fall into one. I'm not sure that it fits under 2 or 3. Maybe it fits under 4 potentially. Is it a fairness and equity thing? And if that is, and then for me, or from us, from a policy perspective, if that is one of your considerations you do want to bring into the policy specifically, then that alerts a change for us. So I think, that's a long-winded answer. I'm just trying to stay away from the discretionary discussion and focus on this is what the policy says.
I'll just add to that, this is the first time we've actually used these considerations because we only set these in the last LTP.
I guess if I can elaborate on that somewhat. So the best of my knowledge, I guess, I've got some farms, so agree or disagree, but I guess this is my opinion. But I kind of feel like, and one of the last ones when we did shift it, one of the considerations that we had, I think, is that, you know, farmers were looking at maybe a bit of an increase, and we were trying to limit what they might see. Payouts were low, they were struggling. I think we had, you know, the farmer group come to the table and say, leave it as it is because they're struggling, blah, blah, blah. I guess this time around, when we're looking at if the UAGC was to stay the same as what it is now, farmers could potentially be looking at a slight reduction in their rates. And yes, I know that they've done it difficult and interest rates are higher, but payouts are also up at the moment. And I guess for me, if they are the group that's to get it, I don't want to stick them with anything if they're the ones that are getting a reduction when maybe they're doing it a little bit easier. If anything is easier in the current economic climate, I don't think so, but a little bit easier than maybe what some of the other groups are dealing with, especially I guess a little more urban related. So I don't know. It's a tricky one.
That
2 cents for sure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, and I will. Firstly, I suppose with the fairness and equity, I mean, we do have other tools in the toolbox in terms of rates remission and all that sort of stuff. So don't dare forget about that. But just comment on the the farming landscape. Yeah, it's good payout this year, but the season is fast drawing to a very quick end with the drought, and so there's been extra costs going into the business as well. Plus, Fonterra's not paying any retros until August, so that means there will be cash flow, issues for farms this coming winter. So that's just an aside. So good payout, yes, but extra costs and a fizzle out. So pretty disappointing autumn.
Yeah, I guess put the rural part aside, it's also the lifestyle block of the commercial that gets affected. So commercial is a business as well, and their rates are going to be impacted more than anybody's from
They are tax deductible, remember?
Yeah, so they're running a business.
Urban's not tax deductible.
No,
Neither are the lifestyle.
no. And see, the lifestyles aren't either.
But can I just comment again? I'm just trying not to get too involved into the discretionary part of it. I think what we have to acknowledge is that the instrument is relatively blunt, and so to the mayor's point, when I go to page 135, which is the top table on the left-hand side on the handout that you've got, and if I answer the question about where is the effect of the revaluation, then you can see, and then the general rate increase, for example, at 27.5, that table to me points out the point that Lania made. You've got that block in the middle, commercial and industrial, and where the biggest valuation changes have occurred, and where therefore that translates into your general rate change. Now, my point about the blunt instrument, okay? The blunt instrument is not targeting rural, and it's not or dairy farms. You will see that the $3 million commercial industrial properties have a 10.6% increase in the general rate because their values move proportionately high. So all I wanted to say is it's not about rural and residential as such. That distribution. Question one is, what is the effect of the revaluation? Well, I went straight to this table and said the effect of the valuation is that you had some properties that moved considerably more than others. In previous revaluations, that has typically been residential and rural, but that's not always. And the margin between residential and rural, plus or minus, is not wide in this one. But that's I'm just talking about the effect of the revaluation. So I just and wanted to emphasise, UAGC is our tool. But by changing, so you can just move to the second column, by changing the UAGC to 25%, just to illustrate, yes, you will see that rural will then go to small increases, yes, But what actually also happens is those that have the biggest increase already get bigger increases. Does that make sense? So a 10% increase for a 2 million commercial industrial with 2 pans goes to 12.3. I'm just illustrating the bluntness of the instrument. If I go back to the considerations that you have, which Lani has put very well in the policy. First one is the effect, whether it's the revaluation or not. First one is the effect of the triennial district-wide property valuation. Well, in 2021, we use those values, there is no effect. The second one is the impact that a higher UAGC may have on those with low fixed incomes and low property values. So if we go to that same table, and let's assume, I think the average value, what is it, 697,000 or something? In that order. So then if you go to the top of the table there, in table B, you see that the increase in general rates at the current UAGC, with the revaluation, the increase in general rates is lower than 5.44. Does that make sense? It's lower than 5.44. So if I were asked, and I'm not trying to approach a jury, I'm just saying that the impact of a higher UAGC, well, at the moment, the UAGC for lower value, or the general rates for lower value properties, taking at 27.5, they pay lower than the increase in general rates. So that's bullet point 2. Bullet point 3, the impact that a lower UAGC may have on the relative share of rates levied on high value properties. So again, we go to that same table and we see if we go to 25%, we know it brings those residential, those rural properties up to still. The point is, they're still not big increases. Yes, I think you look at those numbers and you'd have to accept that they're not big increases. The impact actually is a residential property of 1.5 million. It'll go from 5% increase in general rate to 5.9. Again, I'm just illustrating the bluntness of the instrument. And really what I'm trying to say is it's not about residential, and in this case, it's not about residential and rural per se, because their movements are relatively insignificant, not significant, sorry. In other revaluations, the movement in residential area is huge. So I probably overtalked this issue, but I just want to illustrate the bluntness of the instrument. So then it comes to Councillor Thomas's point, I think, and to Councillor Horn's point, then you've got that catch-all about fairness and equity. And as Lania said, this is the first time we've applied this policy. So what falls under that one? And we're interested in your thoughts on that, because that helps us understand for the future. And remembering, we are thinking about the next time the next revaluation is set, because this feeds into that decision making in some way as a consideration.
Question. Which group pays the highest proportion of rates? As let's say, of the pie, who has the biggest slice to pay?
So there is a chart on that's table C in the report. Page.
So many charts.
You've given us many charts.
Page 136. 136.
Yeah.
So that highlights the share that each group of properties pays. So probably to highlight, and it shows you at different levels of UAGC. So probably to highlight the dairy, for example, the dairy pay, so at 27.5%, they pay 8.8 million of the general rate. So the total general rate requirement is 37 million, so they pay 8.8 million. And as the UAGC sort of steps between the different UAGC caps, basically 1% comes off dairy, and because residential have a large number of assessments, it's almost 1% goes on to residential, so they sort of work that way.
At the risk of confusing things, that question you've raised, no, that's good, Lania. I'm going to risk confusing things. But the question you raise is a really important question that came up early in the formation of the district. And I'm not saying that you're asking this question, but what was put to council is, what should the residential sector pay what should the rural sector pay, what should industrial pay, what should commercial. That was kind of where it was coming from as to what is fair. And what has evolved over the time is that council has said, where you can relate a rate more directly to a service, irrespective of whether a rural or residential, you will pay for that service, e.g. water, wastewater. So that lessens the pie about the other bit, about, well, how much of the pie should residential pay and how much of the pie should rural, etc. Okay. Now you have one tool in your armory, which is the UAGC. The decision about how much each sector pays actually is out of your hands. That is the general rate. And it's probably good that it's out of your hands. That is, an independent body assesses by the only mechanism we have, the only indicator of wealth in relation to tax. And I know it's a blunt one. CV is not a good representation of income, but that is what we have. And somebody independently comes along and says, and looks at all the properties and says, this is what this is worth. So this is, in theory, I'm just saying that, what these types of properties should pay. So that
and that doesn't always relate to the value of the service that they are receiving.
So to get to my point, there is really ultimately no fair way of administering this. And I mean, if I'm not a rate payer myself, my landlord is a rate payer. And when I consider what they have to pay for, I want the load that everyone pays to be as balanced as possible, because you won't get fair. There is an imaginary concept in this. So as my view is, we should not adjust the UAGC from 27.5% and leave it where it is one more year, and the next council and whoever they may be can look at this again. But to say it's not fair is not really a great argument for the UAGC to be removed. I think we should keep it as it is.
Why is keeping it as it is less fair or more fair? Like why is that? Why is that the argument solution?
If you look at the 8.86 million from dairy properties, how many dairy properties are there in relation to the residential properties that produce 16,300,000 of the rates?
It's there.
So it would be more equitable.
1,586.
It would be more equitable to leave it where it is.
So it would be more equitable for dairy farmers to pay less than what they are now, but more equitable for everybody else to pay more.
As a proportion of the number of properties, they're already paying well beyond as a proportion.
You know, Alpha is another slide there. Yep. Has the level of service for rural properties changed? Has the level of service for urban property changed? Why does rural get to have a lower rate set based on the fact that that's getting exactly the same services as they were before? In fact, we're trying to improve them. That's one of our go-to things. So is that an easier way of deciding whether something's fair and equitable? The level of service is the same. Why are you paying this?
And look, I think it's a great way of framing it. And I think, sorry if I can, and I try not to play political here, but I think the question you're asking about fairness and equity is the gist of the question for us going forward. But to your point, Councillor Tapp, level of service, okay? So if I go back to table B, table P, so we know that the general rate increase is 5.44% in total. So if we draw a line, if we at 27.5% UAGC, if we draw a line under residential at 1.5 million, if we have it at that table, all of those blocks of property, some properties, table B and the 27.5, which is where we're at. I'm just picking your point up about.
That's also on the handout.
And on the handout. If we draw a line at residential 1.5 million and we go down to the lower value properties, you will see that the general rate increase at 27.5% for all of those properties is below 5.44.
Yeah.
Okay. Then if we go to the bottom of the table, which is the rural, and you can see what that scenario there is, negatives. Right? So the argument is, why should we allow some people, and I'm sorry, I'm phrasing it this terms, has the level of service changed for these properties? No. Let's say no.
Has the cost of providing that service, even though it may not have changed, has the cost of that gone up?
Absolutely. And 5.44%. Exactly. But what I'm trying to point to your point about whether people are paying their fair share of this. So it comes back to that block in the middle. It comes back to that block, all that block in the middle from 7.5 down to 7.8. They are the ones who are paying disproportionately more for the same level of service with the cost increase. They're paying higher than the 5.44. So that's a good point. I like how you framed that. That helps us frame the discussion in the future.
Is there any way we can say you don't go into negatives, you go down to zero, and then that money goes into a separate portion of the pie? I don't know. I'm throwing shit out there.
Look, I think, and that's why I don't say we enjoy, but I think it's useful to inform the discussion if I think for it.
So really, if you look at it in a very theoretical sense, wouldn't it be nice if we could sit around the table and all agree what a particular property should pay in rates? And all agree, and you'd look at it, and it would be a very complicated process, but you could eventually get to it where you could say in 2026, the rates paid by all these properties are set. And then the following year, you apply whatever the rate increase needs to be, 5.2 or 5.6 or whatever, and it's applied against those properties forever.
Absolutely. CV
but it's just
incredibly blunt for 100%.
Right. Okay. Now, we'll never get to that stage. We'll never get to that. None of us could sit around this table and get to a stage where we could all agree that the various lifestyle, commercial, residential, whatever. So I go back to it again. That there is the people that are impacted most at this stage are commercial and lifestyle. That are effectively a small group now of the overall ratepayers. All right. And to alleviate their issue, you impact the others. And I just do not see a compelling reason to change from 27.5 for this year.
It's never going to be balanced because there's so many different rate classes that to look at urban versus rural is just too blunt. It's those people in the middle that end up with the rate rise. I hear what you're saying. I get it, but it's a tool that you use now if there's a significant movement in values. I acknowledge there's a reduction in the farming properties, but it's not significant. If it was a 5% reduction, then you would definitely consider if there was a difference, you'd work a way around it. But yeah, it's not easy. It's a blunt instrument, and I think if we're going to channel urban versus rural, that's not the right argument to be debating. I think it's that you've got to look at all rating properties and how it impacts everybody. Peter.
I think we should stick with 27.5. My reason for this, if we look at the table D, which has the overall rate increase, because the UAGC is just one tool to get to the overall rate increase. I mean, I'm first of all very impressed that for all the residential properties that the increase is 5.9, which pretty much mirrors the rate increase across the anyway. So how that worked out is just by chance of good management. But my point is just that that 27.5 in the total rate increase column is pretty close to the overall rate increase for most properties except the rural ones. But for this time, I can live with the rurals getting a slight decrease, because to give them a modest increase, it's going to affect the commercial properties. They are going to get to a much larger increase than they would otherwise. So for me, thinking with what we currently do is fine.
Gary.
Just totally struggling to understand. Yeah, but when I reflect on the conversation that we're having on Māori land ownership, I see that the majority of that will fit in that middle block. But the potential or the valuation of those blocks is way different to, I guess, the valuation of the blocks of the neighbours. And I say that because the neighbour can sell that block and materialise the value of that, whatever value has been set. Whereas Māori land should not be sold or will not be sold. And Māori land held in the Māori land court, the general Māori land, will probably not be sold because they will have ownership that rate up to about 100 owners. And so it would be impossible to sell. So all I'm doing is sitting here thinking the impact of that middle block falls squarely on the owners of those Māori land blocks. And I can't see any sort of, I guess, allowance or equity to change any of that. What's the solution for Māori landowners? It's horrendous. If I look across the Matamata-Piako district, I think in the analysis that we did about 5 years ago, there's about 10,000 odd hectares of small blocks all over the place that are going to be impacted by this. So that's huge as a collective. All the inability to be able to sell that land to materialise the value, to be able to get out of being able to pay the sorts of rates. It's huge impact. And I don't know what the answer to that is.
So you're identifying that there was that sort of smaller lifestyle type property. So there's a negative impact on them because they're not, generally they don't earn an income, it's a lifestyle block.
I've looked through some of the legislation around, rebate of rates and all this sort of things. It doesn't seem to be much of the incomes.
No, it's the rates of emission is more for residential and people on fixed income.
Irrespective of what decisions made today, Gary, I'd like to have a look at some of the figures you're thinking about, because it's something that we should perhaps consider in the future. And, I'd like to see a table that showed those, a representative sample of that to see how that impacts, because I don't know that we can pull it out. But
it adds another dimension.
It adds another dimension, but it for the sake of this session today, but it would be good to have a really good analysis of that in the future.
And Madam Mayor, if I keep coming back to the things that I'm always talking about, it's about understanding the idea. And this is an economic impact on our potential.
James.
I think two things. So just to when we look at that table that's further down that Kayla asked a question about with what percentage of it comes from where. So on that table, commercial and industrial and the lifestyle blocks, that percentage doesn't change, right? It's exactly the same. Maybe the commercial stuff changes by 0.1. And yet, from a 27.5% to a 25% UAGC change, we have this massive shift in what the rates would be, even though that sector pays no more money from that change. So I guess that's a frustration, if nothing else, when we're trying to deal with particular areas, that it has such a massive consequence on that. What's the reason behind that, and is there anything in the future that can be done to tweak that?
I think the cause of that is that there's a low number of assessments that pay the UAGC.
Right.
But that's why it's. Yeah.
So I think that confused things. The second thing I'm going to say, and we had it in the discussions, and it was kind of put up as being a separate issue from the rating, which is I'm still looking long term. I know that we have to deal with the rates and what they're going to be today, but to go, we might look at it. Well, there can be a future council that looks at whatever it is. We still have to have an eye to where things are going to go in the future.
Unfortunately, Dane, we can't predict something that we don't fully know. And I think that's where the UAGC fits in today's conversation.
Yeah, I disagree. And I know where you're coming from, and I'm still going to put it out there because I think it's still something that has to be taken into consideration, whether you agree with it or not, right? The problem is that water rates and wastewater is going to be massively expensive for only the people that have the services going forward, right? And so what I think is going to happen is that they're going to end up with those people are going to end up with a massive rate increase in the not too distant future. We may look at it again then, whoever's in here, and shuffle things around so that we can spread the costs a little bit even. And what the farmers will say, which rightly so, will look like they are subsidising those wastewater increases. And to get on top of it to some extent when they're getting, a reduction in rates today, to me, it's still getting a little bit ahead of that now to change the UAGC to 25 and have them pay a little bit more of the pie now so that it can stay where it is in the future. So, I still think that's, while it's not specific to this, you can't sit here and go, let's not take future considerations into account. You can't.
And look, I think I understand that, and that's actually what we try and do as well. We try and think of what's happened in the past and what will happen in the future. And so if we, and look, I'm just reassuring you, I'm not getting into your political domain. If the decision from council today is we want to make a change to the UAGC because we don't want to have some properties having negative movements in rates, it drops. We don't think that should happen. If that's a policy statement that you arrive at, then the caution I'd just say to you is it's going to happen again. And in fact, it probably will happen again to a greater extent, because what we know from history is that there is typically bigger fluctuation in valuations, far bigger. So, and we've experienced them, and we've had to try and address those. So we have an eye on that. But and to your point about the waters, the other thing that goes in my mind is there is at least a 50% chance that waters will come out of your rates. So you will have a massive drop in rates for you, but you will have a massive drop in rates that you can just make decisions on. So that means, do you compensate for that massive drop in rates? Because our policy is we should have no negatives. So I am thinking about the future, about potential things that will happen, but the domain, let me just reassure you, it's your decision as to why you should tweak it, not mine.
No, I'd like to answer that.
But we're going to be the water bill, so it's
right. Now, can I lead into it? From that, can I lead into that and say that we're talking general rate here, and you're talking a targeted rate. Those people that are paying for a lifestyle, and I've got a lifestyle block, and when I get an annual water bill of $400 for the supply of water, right? What's the water rate? Water.
Metered water.
Metered
water.
Well,
targeted rate.
Targeted rate for water. Right. So mine's 400. How much is it for wastewater? So I have a similar every time I empty my septic tank.
every couple of years.
Right. And my rubbish collection costs me $230 a quarter, I think, yeah, so, yeah, right. So, you know, you've got to consider that the ones that are, on purely, a general rate, do still have.
Do you run your property as a business?
I'm talking about the lifestyle block
Do you
that I.
run your lifestyle block, is it regarded as?
No, it's not.
That's the only thing with dairy, it is a business. You know, it's not just like, I don't, my.
And isn't it good that we have business bringing income?
Oh, no, let's not go that far, I'm just saying.
Okay, James.
Yeah. So I guess I'm gonna vote for it to stay the same. But there's a couple of points that I pick up on. Firstly, just referencing Thompson's around the land ownership. Absolutely, I really welcome this question downstream as to how that impacts. In terms of the CEOs daring to come adjacent to encroaching on, I couldn't help but notice that you didn't propose an increase of 30%, which would have equally well illustrated your point. And if we really do care about that, that's what we should have considered. Councillor Horn, I think there's that figure discussion around how things can be assigned, and this probably isn't the space to do it. But honestly, I'm going to vote for 27.5% because I can't. And I think really the real message here is that having a revenue and financing policy where there is a range in the UAGC from 22.5 to 30% simply doesn't work. We have this discussion every year. It is never resolved adequately. If the next council has the lesson for them should really be set it at whatever you're sitting at, do it once and just leave it, because there's no way that it can be resolved further. Would be the notes that are taken under 3.1 to 3.4. So how do you apply this? Because there's certainly no clear guidance as to what that looks like. Thank you so much for the analysis, Lania. I guess the two things that I thought would have been good to see, and it doesn't impact my decision for the reasons that I said, but that you've done the breakdown here for when it could potentially be shifted. You didn't provide that for the other years that it was shifted, which would be super helpful if we were interested in trends. And secondly, we understood there was a shift in valuations and the impact that it had here. In the other analysis that's given, we saw there was a shift in valuations of whatever, 40% or whatever it was, but we didn't understand how that impacted on the increase to the contributions to the general rates, right? So, right. But if this was to inform the decision, which it didn't inform my decision for the reasons I just said, it would probably be good to have this thing over that. I'm going to go for 27.5% because that's what I think that the next council should just forget about a range, should just set it and leave it.
Okay, so I think there's no more lights on. So James, would you be happy to move the resolution then? So the position on the revaluation.
Number one, the council notes that 1 July 2024 rate will be used as the basis for blah. 2, as stated. 3, council notes the revenue and financing policy specifies the uniform annual general charge within the range of 22.5 to 30%, and taking into account the following considerations into account. Council resolves to set the UAGC cap 2025 at the following rates. A, if the annual plan 25-26 budget is based on the 2024 valuation, the UAGC cap is set at 27.5%. So that's based on the potential valuations that might come through, right? Oh yeah, no, for reasons as articulated when this was specified last year, or last time around, right? This is the valuation that we had when we set the cap last year.
This is based on the 2020-24 revaluations.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, beg your pardon. Oh, yeah, 27.5.
It's regardless.
Yeah, for both.
Is that what you're saying? Because it's just if the revaluations aren't received in time, we will have to revert to the 2021 revaluations and it'll be setting.
Council resolve ULG for 2025-26 year to be set at 27.5%.
I guess what we were looking for there was in terms of the revaluation considerations, is the reason you're sitting it at 27.5 to, is it because of the effect of the valuation, in this case on commercial, industrial and lifestyle property? Why you've chosen?
No, I don't know. Because there's no
Compelling.
Because it's a blunt tool and any movement creates distortions elsewhere in the system. That's why I'm doing it. It's not to do with the lack of compelling reasons. There's lots of compelling reasons why it's shifted, but there's no broad. There's no precise way to apply a change. That's my reason. I'm not sure if anyone agrees with that. And that similarly applies if the annual plan 2025 budget is based on 2021 valuation. The UAGC cap is set at 27.5%. For reasons articulated during the discussions last year.
Because I feel this is deja vu.
Yeah, and then the council results the information being provided to the public in April, May 2025 on a range of points.
Can I just check that you're no precise way? I think that's good. Sorry, I'm just waiting to that. As it is acknowledged that there's no precise way, I was just wondering, is that to offset the impact of the revaluations? Is that the?
Well, I mean, I guess for starters, I'm not only considering the revaluation, right? Like we set a policy here where we were obliged to consider a range of factors. So I'm not hung up on the revaluations.
Okay, so
there's no precise way to address any shifts in the proportion of the general rate increase across all values.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So in other words, if it had been set at 15%, I would be having the same rationale, right? But it's not set at 20%.
So you want to read that out? Try and read it out. Yep.
So I've got caps to be set at 27.5% for the following reasons. Because as it is acknowledged, there is no precise way to address any proportions in the impacts of
the change of the incidence of rates. The change of the incidence of rates. The shift.
Let's say it's no precise because it does not, because the UAGC policy does not offer a precise way to shift in the incidence of rates. Of rate increases, rate changes.
I feel like there needs to be like an A and a B almost, because I don't vote for 27.5. I vote for fitting it. But I certainly agree with James's reasonings for, all that. But,
you're probably welcome to vote against it maybe and give your reasons why, and you can put it in there. That's unless there's another way of capturing that. So James has moved through,
and then so B Sniff. I will specify in there the annual plan 2025-26 budgets based on the 2021 evaluations. The UAGC is to be set at 27.5% for reasons articulated during these deliberations in 2020. Basically, we don't want to revisit whatever that discussion was. It's not helpful.
So I think you're clear on everyone understands what James is moving. I guess it's getting moving right.
I'm agreeing if we could see it up on the screen.
Yeah. Bring it up for us for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what Bruce is going to say. Following reasons is to be set at 27.5. We can get rid of for the following reasons because the UAGC policy does not.
Sorry, I got up halfway.
Allow for a precise way to address the shift in rates incidents across a range of property types and values.
Doesn't it break, do you?
Just right.
Just take instantly, make it as it's here.
Talking about one person's losing sales now.
Contributions across the range of properties.
Yeah.
or range of,
No, because they have that.
well, I think it's a range of class, you know, like, it's, what do they call
A range of valuations.
But it's about the different classes of property.
Property types.
Property types.
Well, I think the point you raised is absolutely right. It's absolutely true of the UAGC. It is very blunt, and I guess that resolution is a forerunner to the policy discussion again for the LTP, because you're right. It will have the same debate will come up, and we will not be able to get it precise. Absolutely right. So perhaps we are, trying something different.
The simple fact is you're going to have two properties.
Yeah.
Right, on the same valuation.
Yeah.
And one, they'll be paying the same, but is it equitable between one property owner and another? Because of what they use in yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's the range of property. What was your
types? Types.
Just
sorry.
Range of property types.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and I was just going to suggest, because the UAGC CAC does not allow for a precise way rather than policy. They can.
Well,
was it the CAC or it's the policy generally?
I mean, the CAC is legally set by the 20.
So is it the revenue and financing policy then doesn't allow? Okay.
Because we can only set it between 2.5.
Sorry, no, leave it there. That is the UAGC policy, isn't it? Yeah. It's not the
revenue and financing policy.
Oh, that's the revenue and financing policy you refer to then.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Like there, we say, blah, blah, within this.
So we clearly need to revisit those considerations.
Well, I just don't think that's, I just don't think it's, like, there's no way.
Sorry,
it's,
revenue.
Yeah, it's a discussion for the next council.
Can I just make one statement before everyone votes, all right? And you know which way I'm going to vote. At 27.5%, there are 13 property classes who pay more than the grade was. At 25, there are only 4.
But are they receiving services, the targeted rate?
Yeah. Commercial industrial 2 and commercial industrial over 2 million, to commercial industrial 3 million, and lifestyle it's 1.25 and 2.5. So only 2 of them, yeah, perhaps. And who says they're not? Because they're lifestyle. They may be on a targeted list. So that's just my point. That's why this is such a blunt talk.
Yeah, and so I just was like noted. I guess this is where we pick up on Councillor Ansell's point about, yes, there may be 13 classes, but what does that mean in terms of the whole rate bill? So it's a complex picture. Anyway, I jumped in.
Okay, so I've got moved James Sainsbury.
And I will second Councillor Sainsbury's motion.
Thank you, Caleb. There's no further discussion. I'll now put the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, so it'll look like those noted.
And
Sarah Jane, do you voting for or against? So Dane, you'd like would you like to put a reason with your vote?
Yeah, I mean, just as I said, I certainly agree with the points brought. I just think we should have shifted it to 25%.
Oh, so it's not, yeah, so you're not.
The second one's fine.
I was good with B as well, sorry, the as well.
Yeah, you're just more that you would have liked to see it.
I would have said A was more equitable. B already.
Just an A and B and one until staying the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm saying one of
yeah, I get you. No, just if you like that captured in the minutes, we can do that. So yeah, with that, the motion is carried. Thank you. It's been a.
Can I ask, is there a better way?
So,
what Bruce said. What Bruce said.
Better way, because this is I don't know how many conversations I've had, and it's gone backwards and forwards and round and round.
Margaret Thatcher's dead, but we could have had politics.
We could have.
Hey, her career was killed before the politics was implemented, Bruce. So
is there a better way?
I'm just going to answer.
Do you want me to give you away? I'm sorry. My answer to that is
no.
Tell me what you want to achieve, and we will try and align it. My experience with rates, and this has been a criticism for a long time. Imagine we go to water meters, even if we keep waters, and we go to water meters. There's a rationale and logic about the fairness of that relative to where we are now. It's still not perfect, there is, but in the armory that we have, We understand what objectives that you, or the tools, what objectives do you have to achieve? And if that objective is, for example, we think that value properties under the average capital value should have a maximum rate of X% of their income. We understand that's your objective. We can say, we can try and find out if we do it. I'd probably say the answer is no, but I'm saying we'll try and achieve what you want to achieve.
Because Kevin makes a point, you know, those ones are reducing and those ones are, you know, people are getting a reduction in rates.
There are also some rural properties who are actually using council-owned water facilities. Are they?
They're metered.
Are they?
Yeah,
It should be metered.
yeah, we metered.
Go to T-Boy.
So that's
Anyway.
that's something that's separate to this. If you've got evidence for that, you need to raise it with management.
Anyway, it's not an easy conversation.
I don't know, better ways to, having capital values is involved in a formula that generates what you pay for something. Certainly makes it interesting. I mean, looking at these tables here, you have, you know, somebody's going to pay, say, 3,500, somebody's going to pay 5,000 for the same services based on what their property is worth. There's no account of affordability, whether people can afford to pay that.
That's the problem.
To take it another step, I mean, there's people in Auckland who can probably afford to pay, but they're going to pay about $20,000 or $20,000 plus for the same services that I'm paying $5,000. And that's just ridiculous. That's just based on capital valuation. And you know, and the third point is this: that the most ridiculous, unfair thing is you go to the supermarket, then you pay the same price for whatever you buy. Yeah. But if you have a family of one, they pay the same for water as a family of 10. And I think in years to come, that will have to be addressed somehow. Water meters.
Maybe about
But
water meters.
also wastewater and other things. It's lots of unfairness in the system, but
Yeah, there's a community good element. And further comment?
Yeah,
Before
I'm
I move on?
just going to say, for me, if you're not going to overhaul a whole system, but I can't see a world in the future where we're going to look at 22.5% or 30%. It's always going to run around the middle. So I mean, to make any kind of a change that might allow some fine tuning, I think you're better off to look at, you know, UAGCs of maybe 25, 26, 27, 28, or 25, 26.25, 27.5. And allow some fine tuning in the middle, because those outliers are just never going to be utilised. They're too far away.
Is that possible?
I guess this will be the next council.
Yeah.
Yes. Discussion. I'm going to say, like, even though we've said at 22.5 to 30, it could actually be from 0 to 30, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'd like to take that comment, because the next council, we could be all wiped out in October. And there's a lot of people in this room who have worked through a few years of UAGCs. And I think that's a really valid comment that Dane makes, that the percentages are too fast. Yeah.
And I think that's where I don't say enjoy, but we welcome this discussion, because we've got 4 bullet points. And now we've tested those 4 bullet points. And now we're saying actually the granularity needs to be different. But whether it's 26 or 27, I think the clarity that needs to come out that we'll be trying to get is the why. There's a bit more definition of the why. And that's good. That's good for our policy, for sure. So really, and can I just acknowledge, I really appreciate all of your input into this, because this does shape our future discussion. Just want to acknowledge the team for all the analysis they've done. And we accept, we don't know everything that you want, but in hearing this conversation, and we can get our minds ready for the next policy discussion. So really appreciate the team, but also the input from yourselves to give us that, to allow us to either fine tune or completely change.
I just wanted to express my thanks to the team for making these things so easy to read. Well,
It's pretty clear spelling it out.
if I may, Councillor Whiting, I'm trying to read these with a almost 7-month-old daughter on my arm, and being able to follow logically where everything works out and still have screaming in my ear is quite helpful. So I just want to express my appreciation to the staff.
Yeah, no, great debate. You know, robust debate. There's always the pros and cons, no matter which way we look at it, it's not an ideal. Right, we will now move on to item 7.7. So thank you, Lania, Tony, and 7.6, sorry.
Oh,
Lania's got the staggered water meters. Yes, Tony.
I'm hoping this is a slightly, a slightly lighter topic.
I think it's taken as read. Are we going to take it as read? There's a process there that
and I've got Tony along if you've got any burning questions about what we're planning to do here.
I think the staggering looks like it's more efficient, more effective of staff time. Yes, there'll be some tweaking to get transitioning across. That's the word of transition. There's no discussion, but I have are you?
Not sure with this, but kind of.
Yep.
I'm hoping that any water meters that are going in from now on are smart meters that don't actually need to be physically read.
So there is, again, if I could bring up CoLab, there is a drive because there's a number of us all looking at water metering, and the hand's gone up to say, look, let's try and do this because together, but we're working with CoLab, and the idea is, yes, absolutely to future-proof this.
Yes.
So that's our goal.
The interesting thing I've written says here, there's no direct email facility in the authority water billing suite. So all of these have to be generated one at a time. Why in this wonderful IT world can't somebody fix that?
Good question. Something that's been asked for a while. It's one of the burdens that we carry at the moment. The technology is coming to make that better and not be reliant on other third-party providers. We are where we are at the moment. This change will certainly make the workflow so much better for the teams, not just the people in front of us.
Yeah, not just the water readers, it's the people generating the invoicing because it's all at once. Whereas you spread it, makes a huge difference.
As an aside, when I do our rates invoices, are they all generated?
Yes.
With a one button pushing?
Because it's a formula, it's fixed. Water meters are variable because of how much water they use. Okay, Russell.
It says here it's the operational issue.
Right, please.
Move the recommendation of
Yes.
Happy to see.
And I'm just
when you're finished.
Yep. Nothing further to add. Okay, moved Russell, seconded Dane that we approve the operational plan to move to a staggered approach to meter water reading. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Fabulous. That's a good direction.
thanks.
Nice work. Like it's around making things more efficient and effective, right? It makes it.
Yeah.
How we operate behind the doors is changing. Thank you. Right. Item 7.7, and we have Mark and Ashley. Welcome, team. Oh, and Nikki from Exist will be joining shortly. So this is the Temero Mountain. Consideration and Sue's in the background too, about strategic management.
It's on Ultra, so you've done tomorrow to share. I think less marks. It's just for the side of the people.
Oh, yeah, and the risk assessments and the document in our agenda item.
Yeah, we also have the present.
Yeah, that's all there.
It might be a bit simpler if we just put the handouts for you as well.
Okay.
Oh,
it was a smart one. Okay, when you're ready to. We just about ready, got it online.
So the purpose of this report is really to try to provide you with enough information at this point to make an in principle call on whether you want to proceed with this proposal or not. And I guess I'll say from the outset, this has been a bit challenging to try and balance giving you enough information to be able to make an informed decision without going too far down the track and spending too much money investigating various things in a lot of detail. So hopefully we've got that balance right
So you have enough information at this stage. If you are keen for this proposal to proceed, then we're also interested in understanding your expectations around the level of investment that you may be comfortable with, council side, pub side. For example, whether you would want this project to break even, or whether you're willing to expend some money to enable it to happen, etc. And those are all things that we can incorporate in actions if we go that way. So just to recap the project, hopefully you should be able to see the maps there. We've got hard copies as well. I apologise, the map that went into Info Council ended up a little bit fuzzy, so we've got a slightly enhanced version for you. Just to recap the proposal itself. There we go.
Perfect.
So the areas, the area in red is the extent of the actual park that the council manages. You can see the reservoir in the middle there, the main car park. If you're standing at the main car park looking at the dam, there's pine blocks to your right, and one circled in orange were the first ones they were interested in harvesting. Now to the left of that, there is indigenous forest. It starts pretty much next to that top green block, 5 hectare block, and it sort of swings around the reservoir until it meets up with the old pine blocks and redwoods again. So that's a significant natural feature, significant bush remnant. So the proposal was, as before by the club, was to log those green areas and then re-establish native vegetation, and at the same time construct some easier walking tracks that will be more appealing to beginners. So a balance of an offering there over time. So we looked at the opportunities and risks. Obviously, there are opportunities long term for biodiversity improvement if we're converting forest blocks into native vegetation and providing a bit of a buffer next to that significant national forest area. There's enhanced recreation opportunities by providing a wider offering, more appealing to families, different age groups, abilities, etc. There's the opportunity to keep collaborating and cooperating with the Te Miro Club. And the proposal broadly aligns with our strategic goals, but there's also significant risks. Some of those admittedly are of a more short-term duration, but nevertheless significant. Any sort of forestry operation will have health and safety risks. When you put that operation in a public park that the public is used to accessing, and where it's harder to control access, then that risk becomes more of a challenge to manage than if it's on a private property that's fenced out from the rest of the world. Environmental risks as well, especially short term in terms of harvesting. We do have the stream there, we have significant natural forest, and we also confirm that there are bats present, and they're a protected species. We've also got our water supply assets, main water line tomorrow as we're running through there. And there's various financial and other risks, which I'm not going to go into in a great deal of detail here. That's in the report. You may have seen the table where we've done a bit of a high-level assessment, looking at the risks. Again, I'm not going to run through all of those, but essentially the main risk mitigation for those risks boil down to having a nominated project manager who is actively managing the project and having a good operational plan to manage those risks. And the other aspect is clarity of roles and responsibilities. The council and the club are working on this together, having certainty of who's responsible for what exactly. Which brings us back, I guess, to the start, which is the decision on whether or not to approve in principle. If it's not approval, then it's fairly simple. We inform the stakeholders and we sort of up the project at our end. If the decision is to approve it in principle, then we're keen to understand your expectations in terms of investment by council and the club, whether you potentially would want the project to break even, or whether you're comfortable with potentially taking a bit of a financial hit in order to enable it. Also risk management, project management, your thoughts on that, because all those things can feed into the MOU and into budgets, etc. And then the second aspect is if you are keen for it to go ahead, just the relative priority compared to other council projects as well.
Okay, we'll open up for discussion. Bruce.
Thank you. Actually, very comprehensive report. It was a bit somewhat confusing in some ways, and especially on the financial side of it to me, and because it talked about revenue of 45,000, and I thought revenue of 45, and we've got $215,000 cost and whatever. And so I did I rang Shane to and he said no, that's the 45 is actually the net profit on the assumption of what the log values were, at that time. And I think that has possibly gone a little north of that now. One of the things that doesn't show on your risk assessment is the financial risk if we don't harvest in this way and we leave them standing and they get to over maturity and we've effectively got no asset other than a major cost to have them pulled out, and I think that's something we should be looking at when we look at strategically how we should. And you can know I'm for this, and I'm for it because and I can I just share with you, all right? I asked Shane.
And it's the mountain bike club.
The mountain bike and the mountain bike club.
What role is he? He's on the committee or involved?
He's involved, heavily involved and heavily in my ear at times. There's 420 members, which includes families. So it's 650 at an educated guess. Weekly race nights up to 50 people. Waikato Bay are plenty. Comps, they had 370 competitors there and support crews. Over 20 schools representing national mountain bike champs. They've been asked to host the National Secondary Schools Championships. I know he has talked about, and this is in a facility that has one long drop dunny and one tap and a public barbecue that was provided by club members and I know great whatever that had it. So on a weekend, up to 200 riders, many walkers. I asked what sort of voluntary work goes into this. He says, he knows people that can put 500 hours a year into this from his voluntary side of it. So we're talking about a facility that it's one of those little jewels in our crown, and we probably haven't recognised it as such. And I would like to think that we could support this in principle, the state, because he said they don't want to spend any more resource and time into it if we're going to say, no, we're not going to say, yeah. So I would like to see the thing in principle, but I think it's one of those things that should be considered when we start talking financially. I sort of reserve, do we pull some money out of reserve or whatever? This is something that probably needs to get into an annual and long-term plan as to how much we want to put into providing this result. We spend how much?
Well, they can do an application.
They can, yes, exactly. Well, it needs to be, this is just one part of it, isn't it? But, you know, we spent $1.3 million putting together a playground in Matamata, all right, for the Matamata and wider community. An excellent toilet there, a couple of $100,000 plus and whatever, and we're fighting to get 20 grand or whatever. I think Shane's concern is that if we looked at those figures as we show in the report, the impact could be with project management and with a harvesting consultant. This was put together, a lot of this was put together by a harvesting consultant anyway, was it not? And he tells me that that person would basically do it for that, you know, for Nix. All right. So I don't know. All right.
Why would they do it for Nix?
They're probably a member of the club.
Okay.
Right, so there's conflicts there.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting, where I'm coming from is that if we approve in principle, I think we're going to find that the cost of it will be in excess of the projected income from the trees, and so we should expect that there will be some cost to council. That's all. That's my feeling of it, and from what I can read. But that's why.
Okay, you go to Sharon.
I just want to know, with the new changes coming under the RMA Act, will that have any implication to council should we approve something now, or is there anything that could implicate us with their changes?
Generally, if things are under process under the existing law, there's usually a crossover provision, but most of the forestry activity would be covered under the National Environmental Standard for Commercial Forestry. There's a couple of unknowns that may or may not trigger consent. So, for example, if there's a need for additional roading, if the harvesting contractor looks at it and decides they need to upgrade a stream crossing or something, so that the equipment that they happen to have can deal with, maybe need an upgrade for crossing, that might trigger consent. But the actual forestry activity itself, as long as it complies with the national standard, which is current. Yeah, so, if there's changes, usually there's sort of provisions for things that are in progress to keep going under the old legislation.
Great, thank you. Caleb.
My main concern is mitigating any impact on water. And secondarily, but no less important, is the bats that we need to measure. And when I was reading through the report, okay, sure, we could, in theory, support some principle, but my biggest concern is any potential environmental degradation, especially given that we have a water treatment plant there and a reservoir for that there. And I believe in the report, it's not the whole have said they're quite happy to get behind this, but their big issue is like me, they want to make sure the water is safe. And any contractor coming in is cleaning up the mess with the slash and such things behind it. That would be my biggest concern.
That's really.
So I'm surprised there's no consent issues, because you would be dealing with the mud and the blood and the.
Yeah, going back a few years, you would have had to, but with the National Environmental Standard, that kind of modifies all the district plans in the country based. So you've basically got permitted activity rules that you have to do certain things, and they have to notify the district council and the regional council, and they have to comply with that national standard, which I guess the idea was to have consistent rules for forestry throughout the country.
Russell.
Thanks for the report. It was made it easy to make a decision. Coming from a family that uses that track all the time, my grandson and my son race on it, and at some of those race meetings that Bruce mentioned. School participation, I think that's huge, and it brings in all the families to the area. It's a great asset for us. District's taken a long time to get here. I know Shane's been at my ear for many years, coming out of Ponterra where he works occasionally. Hopefully it doesn't take as long to get the next steps going, but yeah, I'll be voting to approve this in principle. Yeah, all of
Thanks,
this.
Russell. So,
Is there any hard costs in here that says project manager cost? I mean, I obviously read it, but is there any hard costs, Mark?
We have a
I
few.
sort of said a bit of a recommendation, but nothing.
We,
What is your project management cost?
we have a few estimates, ballpark things.
Those ones, or are they sort of a bit harder than that?
They're a little bit, sorry, I'm just trying to find it quickly.
Yeah.
I had it open.
Just while he's finding that,
Page 158.
I was just going to comment that we assume financial prudence around the project is one of the things that council would expect, including getting quantification and assurance around revenues, etc. So that would be part of, if you would, but again, we might have done some preliminary work. Those are the things that we would do more work on if you approve in principle. So, but your point is absolutely valid. We would expect you to want us to nail things out.
Yes.
It's fair.
Yeah. Dave.
Obviously, I'm happy for them to improve the principle, and I think I'm happy for them to keep any profits from the trees. I'm not sure that I really want council to kind of be on the hook for anything if there's any overruns past that. But having said that, I also think that they are doing council a favour with what is going to cost money on the track. So the trouble for me for being, on the hook, I guess, for the cost is that there's no definitive number of what that might be. And so to just be like, oh yeah, we'll go ahead and do it, we'll pick up the pieces, not keen on that. But I still think they're doing a solid for council going forward, which is where I'd be like, interested to see what we could help them with when we've got some things in the future, because they're going to save us money long term and risk long term, I think. But I don't want to be on the hook for costs this time around.
And we can, through the agreements, etc., we can frame that, and we can, without an extensive report, we can come back to you and update you on those things, because trust me, I'm not signing in a document which I think council will be uncomfortable with. Yeah, so that's, I think the team's already said, that's why we really want to hear, if you do want to go in principles, those, e.g. the concern about protecting the waterway, the finances, that management, all of those things are critical. The most critical thing for me before I sign anything off is health and safety on this, but all of your concerns are right up there.
Yeah, and and you're quite right on the health and safety side. But I also don't want to see a lot of costs balloon out, because that obviously affects on the whole project and the restoration. And I hate picking on bets, but $30,000 on it to bets when they've already done that. There's a roost inside nearby, and not actually in the.
Are they in the pine trees or?
Well, they'll be hovering around, but there's a big area there that they'll be in, and I'm sorry, I mean, much as I like the little kind of scary looking native mammals, $30,000.
It's an industry.
Between 20,
15 to 20.
It's an industry. It's an industry.
What's that?
It's an industry on its own, that hunting industry.
Oh yeah, look, yeah, I know.
They can charge what they like.
But I mean, for me, they've actually done that work. There's a roosting station nearby. That's fine. Let's just put a mutter on the chainsaw, get on with it.
I would actually argue these birds are endangered. They seem to be popping up every
Yeah, there's a lot.
With their long tail.
And yes, there's an industry in it, so we're all going to the get.
So I imagine, just to Councillor Whiting's point, there are some things which we can control ourselves and others that we can't, and I'm pretty sure around bats we will have to comply with certain things, and I remember having to try and do that with the property down the road that we're looking at developments.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah. I thought that might have come up as an example. I didn't want to say it.
I'm going to retire.
Hey, Russell?
Well, I can just bring up a point that you said that you won't be signing off if the health and safety doesn't come up to it. If you don't sign off on that, will that come back to council again after that?
Oh, look, if there's any suggestion or any potential roadblock to this, because if the decision is in principle, that means council wants us to go ahead with these safeguards. So if there's anything that's likely to cause, I'm not going to make a decision not to sign without you knowing. Yeah. So please be reassured.
just been 65 years, never seen a bat in my life. That has been, they don't exist, maybe just means I don't go to the west of where they are.
Take up cycling.
I'm okay with doing this, I guess. Do we have, just a question, do we have the capability within staff to actually, how much time is this taking? Is it going to have another half a person a year, or I mean, what's going to happen? Is it going to be a designation change required?
So if I can answer that question, this isn't at the top of our priority, but it's not unusual for us to get approaches from groups that signal that partnership approach. So it's an opportunity, and the point has been made at some point in the future we will have to mill these trees. So it's a great opportunity. But I would have to say that my approach on this would be, I'd be expecting to gauge resources so we can progress this within the cost of the project and with the right expertise. Now, I understand that people might say somebody can do something for nothing. I've got to sign the bottom line. I'm the one that goes to jail. So it'll be a person that I'm satisfied with. So the answer, really long-winded again, I do apologise, is we will have to engage resources to help us get this over the line, and that's all we'll do. And that's all we'll do. And if that creates a problem with the finances, I'll be coming back to you.
So, and that would be incurred as a cost and taken off the
It'll be all ring fenced. I think to the point that's been made, we would like to try. I think we'd like to try and get this over the line without any additional cost to council. That may not be possible, but that's the objective. Yeah. It's possible.
So I cannot understand how they survive with that many people in one place with one tap and one toilet. How is that even possible? Where are they going really, Bruce?
Well, no. Well, I did. Yes. Okay. I will say that there's a lot of trees are in. I just see this as being an opportunity to say, yes, let's go. We're going for it.
We've already got that. So the only question I have is around with it, enlarging it, is the infrastructure with parking as well. Parking is probably the most immediate one that concerns me, because if we're adding more tracks, that will add. So that's a flow on. I know it's another issue, but just want to be aware.
There are existing tracks in that area already, but the idea is to, as I understand it, is to kind of create easier ones and realise.
Yeah, there are. That's right. Yeah, but it still means more people, presumably.
It will only get bigger. All right. The issue.
My comment was serious.
Yeah, it's about infrastructure.
Yes, they tried that at Warriery Falls. They had one long drop and one tap.
And that's why I'm saying that we should be recognising that this is a facility that we may well have to put some money into in the future.
Yeah. So am I getting a feel around the room around some of the conditions we're putting behind this in principle? Is that we're going to, obviously, when they come to us, it said at no cost to council. So is that one of our conditions, that it's at no cost to council? And if there is, and that all health and safety, the environmental impacts all addressed?
I don't mind some cost to council, because I think it's a great facility, but I would like to know what that cost is and that it's not outrageous, and also where's the money coming from, which is always a question that we get asked. So I don't mind some, but I don't.
Yeah, and it's defined some as the problem.
What I don't want to have is like council's almost underwriting the project, and then we're just like, well, we just got to pick up the pieces.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm not comfortable with.
Okay. To me, it's more. They're looking at maybe $45,000 net profit at the end.
No, because that'll just get swapped. No, that will get it's net. The net profit of 45 is from the harvesting that will go towards some of this work, and a lot of and there's a lot of restoration type work which they say they can develop and do themselves. I from my point of view, we should be approving this in principle to allow the staff to develop this further and come back to us with a more definitive financial thing or whatever Okay, so that we can direct.
I think it needs to come back to us. I think it needs to come back to CEO, and if he's happy and all the boxes are ticked, if we've, then.
So then we've got to, in the recommendation, then we've got to be able to say, as long as it's within X dollars or it's cost neutral, and that doesn't get here.
That's the condition that I'm asking about, Caleb.
I think we should have a cost cap. If we get to X dollars, we say, sorry, we're not putting any more in.
Well, we haven't committed to putting any money in at this point.
I understand that. What I'm trying to say is, we say to them from day dot, we will not go past X. We will help you to point X, but after that, we cannot underwrite this project.
But we don't know. We're not underwriting it though. That's probably the direction that I'm getting, is that the council does not want to underwrite.
No, but I get where it's coming from. We want the project to cost X amount.
So the other challenge I have is when we do this in principle, and if we set the parameters today, then it doesn't have to come back to us. Because again, that adds another layer of time. I'm just conscious of, let's make an effective decision.
I agree, but that is going to be in that recommendation.
Yes,
so that
this is going to be yes, correct.
So how much are we prepared to put
well,
on the table?
it's at no cost to council at this point in time.
I'm saying that I think that it's a great project, community values, it's benefits and enhances the whole area. So I don't think I think we should invest some money, but I'm just saying what number. I don't know.
And where is it coming from? It's the other question.
Yeah, where is it coming from?
So can I ask a question? Yeah. Where will this stand if, for example, the report comes back that says, and you put it to Mania and it says, this is what it looks like. It's going to cost us. It's going to cost council 100,000 or 200,000. Right? When's that likely to come, and where does it then fall into the annual long-term plan scenario? All right, that we should be.
So the timing of the project.
Yes.
I guess what I was thinking was, if we get approval in principle, then there are these comments made about costs and revenues. And I know there's a risk around the revenue changing extra. I'd like to kind of get some confidence around all of those things, because once I understand those, we can then understand where our cost pressures are. What we and I'm not sure that we cannot. We have to underwrite some cost to get to a point.
Yeah.
Because I don't have people sitting here ready to. So the first cost is actually getting, to me, the first bit of work is populating that detail so that I can see the full picture, and that I can tell you what our risks are. And it'll probably cost me, a few $1,000s to get there. And if there's somebody on the group who's prepared to write up the harvesting plan and because they can do it, great, I'm going to get it reviewed. That's how I deal with it. So that's peer review. So that's how I would deal with it. So I feel like I feel like we need a little bit of assistance to get that full picture. Well, I won't sign an agreement until I've got that full picture. So and I can't tell you whether that's $20,000. What I can tell you, guys, I probably need a few $1,000s, probably $5, to get to a point where I've got the information that I can say, actually, this looks really good or not. Right. To be honest.
Well, actually, $5 sounds very cheap to me.
So what you're saying is that there is going to be a cost to the council.
Yes.
But it'll be mainly administration costs.
That's the initial cost.
That's the initial cost.
So we can't say that there will be no cost to the council. So we're going to have to say there is going to be X.
We could say that it comes out of the proceeds.
But where does the project manager come in?
Well, so I would hope that it sounds like they've done a lot of work. They've done a lot of work. So I just haven't seen all the work, and I shouldn't. But now we're getting to another point. Let's put it together. I was thinking we might need a little bit of expertise to help the team. That might be a Nikki, to get all those things together so that we can then say, right, this is what it's looking like to us. And at that point, we can decide whether we've got enough or not. So I'm not trying to spend a lot of money initially, but I do think there's to the point is we don't want to hold things up.
No.
So can I? So if we look at this recommendation, can we say that reports received,
that the council approves in principle the proposal to harvest it, right? And if the continued investigation shows that it's cost neutral, that the chief executive can go ahead and process it, right? And if it looks at, but if the investigation shows that there is a financial cost to council, that it come back to us, right, for a final decision.
Understand where it get funded from.
Yeah. I think in the you just put something about council's allowed to cover its own administration costs. Yeah. Right, we might not got a number on it, but it's going to be reasonable. It's not going to be anything crazy.
Well, it's going to be consultants because council's own. We haven't got the resource here to do it in-house.
Yeah, I mean, there is thing that's fair to put onto the club if it's council doing its own checks.
Yes, so I guess the point here is that it wasn't regarded as a priority because it came in as a public forum, and that's where the lane we sit in is that the team have got a lot of work, and this one came in from the side, and it's where there's a feeling to progress it, and so that means there's going to be an external consultant used potentially to, because I don't see anything from that you're going to be able to achieve. Will be external. Yeah. So there is a cost.
Yeah, we would be able to do the higher level administration and oversight from a project management perspective, but we want to engage to get the best bang for buck to someone that's very adverse in the industry and can give us the right advice so we're not mucking around and we have that clarity on what needs to be done.
So council happy to pick up that cost, whether it gets funded, where would it get funded from? Because there's not much, so it comes from somewhere, whatever.
Would it be the
reserves? Yeah. Bulk fund or whatever, because if it's a 10,000 or to get to that point, then it needs to be cost neutral after that, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I guess I was hoping that I might be able to cover all costs and still achieve the outcome. So that's
the intention.
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
That might not be completely possible. We will try to cover our own internal costs as far as practical. We want to get to a point. Look, sorry, to your point, Councillor Dewhurst. What we've got is a first milestone, which is the financial assessment for the next move, and I think that's fine. I mean, I'm comfortable with that. We would do that anyway, so that's good, and we can get to that point. I can get to that point without committing a lot of financial costs, but I will be engaging some resource to do that, and I will work out how I do that. But financial prudence is one of the first stops.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the 4 recommendations that are in there. I mean, nowhere in there does it say anything about guaranteeing to mirror anything.
Yeah, it's just
if there is excess, it could be allocated to. I'm 100% fine with it. We're going to make it do anything, make it 0.5.
Yes, this is the thing: is that we can make it 0.5 that it be cost neutral.
Yeah.
And if it's not, bring it back.
I mean, I'm happy if there's a profit. I'm happy for them to have the whole lot. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Well, I guess that's a precedent in itself too, is it not? Because it's technically council. They're doing work, but we can make a decision.
We're responsible for the trees. They have to come down at some point. It might as well be now.
And it's for the benefit of the community.
Yeah. But yeah, make it 0.5.
Have you got somebody that's going to do
so what is everyone happy with around a potential 0.5? Is it to just aim to be cost neutral?
Cover its own administration costs, minimal administration costs, otherwise cost neutral to council.
Yeah. And we can look in the future at what can be done. I think, and I may be wrong, but part of this come about because of the car parking issue and the fact that car parking costs started rising. And Shane said to me, "Oh, we're coming up with a new idea. We'll if we can harvest the pines, we'll be able to utilise that." Well, that's not going to happen. So that's where the future thing comes in. But yeah.
Okay. So Kevin, are you happy to move the recommendation? Do you want to add a 5 around cost?
Well, I like the sort of thing what Dame was
Dame
saying.
said.
Yeah.
Yes, so council comes up saying minimal administrative costs. Yes. And the project otherwise stays cost neutral to council.
That's number 5.
I mean, it already says, proposal approved, council will allocate the net revenue, which kind of
But that's like that.
insinuates that anyway, but it's right now.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. The smarter Tamiro people are, and the more they can get people to come in and help them out with the right qualifications, the more money they'll get.
Okay, so draw it up there, that council covers its own administration costs, what, in the initial phase or what? In developing the MOU? Is that what we're saying? So it's initial administration costs in developing the, in developing the MOU? Okay, does that fit? Any, you happy with that, Kevin, is your motion? Oh, Peter, you.
I've got a little problem with number 5, as somebody else said before, you know, it's an asset on council land, and if it costs a few bucks to improve that asset, I wouldn't have too much of a problem with that, depending on the cost of.
We don't know it yet, though.
Well, this is
to take us to that next level.
Our issue is this is really the tree side of it.
Yeah.
All right. What you're talking about and the theme that I support is the future development of it as a separate.
So let's just look at this for now and be aware that there's a bigger picture to consider.
So just on that point, we do intend to, in the second half of this year, progress the reserve management plan for Tamira. So it's an opportunity to hear from all the different stakeholders about what their aspirations for the future are, which can really feed into annual plan, long-term plan, bond funding, etc. I just wanted to mention something on the costs. We do have some ballpark estimates for various things. We deliberately didn't put it in the report because the ballpark is quite wide in some cases, and we need to do a bit more work.
Throwing it down at something.
Because we need to figure out where the continuum will land, and part of that would be a conversation with the club, trying to figure out, because there are some things where we know what it will cost and we have to employ a contractor to do X, but the club might have expertise to be able to do that, so we can then kind of refine those figures. But we do need to do a bit of work.
Yes.
Someone has to do a bit of work.
And also that timing too. I mean, this is not in our long-term plan, obviously.
No, it's separate to everything, separate to our annual plan.
Exactly. So that has to be all worked out.
And for me, the key point is when they presented at the public forum, they said it would be at no cost to council. So I think that's a critical point that they have put forward to us, that it would come at no cost to council. So we have the recommendation there up on the wall. Do I have a seconder for Kevin's motion? Thank you, Dave. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Well done. Good conversation. Gives you good reassurance. Well done. Okay, we'll now race through to item. The naming rights, 7.8, naming rights request for the Lawrenceville Event Centre.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and councillors. So firstly, just again, thank you, staff. This issue got thrown at, but not thrown. It's an issue that we put to staff, and logically, the staff said to the executive team, to do this right going forward, we should have a policy, and they're absolutely right. But we also recognise that, well, is there an interim measure? And so I used their report to an approach I recommended to the executive team is, it'll take us, I don't know how many months before we can do a policy. But in the interim, can we use this as a learning, because it's not a high risk, particularly proposal. And so we used the staff report to generate a checklist that wasn't me generated, it was generated by one of the large language models. And we populated it based on the information that we have as our attachments to it. So thanks to Mark and his team during the initial report. It does seem to us to be a relatively low risk thing, and we do think there are learnings out of this for our future policy. So we think that works. You would have received, I hope, a letter from about confirming the $30,000. I have since also received, and contacting the family were well aware of the proposal, and I have since received another letter from the service club that has said we are committed to providing the rest of the contribution. So some of those unknowns have now, not unknowns, they haven't been confirmed, they've now been confirmed. So we're now in a situation where if you are of the mind that we can advance this, provided that you understand that we are doing it prior to having the formal policy in place, but that this issue will inform a future policy.
It's very low risk.
I'd like to second that and allow my esteemed colleague, Mr. Dewhurst, to move it.
He probably has to declare an interest as a member of Rotary.
Yes,
We're all free to, we're all free.
But you don't have any advantage from it.
The local service club is the Rotary Club. And I think I can.
Yes.
I think that would be, I think, fair.
Yeah. So moved, Bruce, seconded, Kevin. That we,
Bruce.
yeah, we approved the naming of the Court of Morals Event Centre. Yeah,
Parts.
Yep.
Ask a question. So we've got the money to do some work in the event centre, and I totally support the naming rights and all that. What is planned to be done, and what is if there's a cost blowout? We won't be responsible for that. Will Mr. Dewhurst fund the shortfall if it becomes 70,000?
No, there's a budget. This will be on top of what the budget is, I would assume. Am I right in that?
Yes, we would make this work as additional work that we would manage the risk to make sure that this funding, which we otherwise would not have, is going to cover it. So it's a fair point. I mean, there's always a risk introduced, but I think that with the group involved, who we have worked with before, groups, they'll understand that we need to manage any risks. I don't see that as a large risk, but it's a fair point.
Because there's some painting and what other works planned, just for interest sake, so that people know.
Well, my understanding is that there has been pricing supplied to council for 64,000 or something.
For painting.
For the painting that's required. But the proposal at this stage, doesn't actually say specifically what, and I would have thought that will come in a memorandum.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Great.
As to just how that would be.
Perfect. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Caleb.
I do. I mean, I'd never had the chance to meet Verco, but the reputation he left is significantly positive, not just for the council, but for the entire community. And I think this is a very good, easy way.
Well, he was so involved with it. The thing was, he was a key person involved in the building of it, so it's quite fitting.
Community board member to be there.
Correct. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And then the final item is just my mayoral diary. I'll take that as read. I move that it be received. Seconded, Russell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. And that completes our agenda for today. Yeah. Thanks for the debate and discussion. You know, we have to talk through these matters at times. And we've come to some decisions. So thank you, everyone. I'll now declare the meeting closed.